What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. Today's episode is going to be brought to you by Mystery Ranch, built for the mission. And if you haven't been rocking a Mystery Ranch Fireline pack for your, well, at least a majority of your career, your back probably sucks. It probably hates you. And yeah, you might want to see a chiropractor, y'all. Anyways, aside from the best, most comfortable, and the most well-built Fireline packs in the game, they make a ton of other load-bearing essentials. Like what, you might ask? Well, I'm sitting here looking over at my Mystery Ranch Assault 21 and my 3-way briefcase from Mystery Ranch. Both are in Wildfire Black, and you're probably asking, why is he rambling on about these two stupid things? Well, the briefcase and the backpack, not only are they useful, well, check this out. A portion of the proceeds from sales of those particular items will go back into another thing that Mystery Ranch has created called the Backbone series. Yeah, it's going to be funding those scholarships for those folks that are going above and beyond to further their careers. So, you want to find out more? Go over to www.mysteryranch.com and check out the Backbone series, and also check out the Urban Assault 21 and the 3-way briefcase, both in Wildfire Black. They're pretty badass. But yeah, the Mystery Ranch Backbone series, not only is it an awesome storytelling platform for the folks in Wildland Fire, but it's also an opportunity for you folks in the field to further your career by getting on board and getting one of these $1,000 grants. Yeah, $1,000 is up for grabs. So it's easy. Go over to www.mysteryranch.com and check out the Backbone series and submit your story. If you're chosen, well, simple as that. You win the grant. So once again, go over to www.mysteryranch.com and check it out. The Anchor Point Podcast is also going to be brought to you by our premier coffee sponsor, and that is going to be none other than Starbucks. Ha, just kidding. It's Hot Shot Brewery. It's kick-ass coffee for a kick-ass cause, and a portion of the proceeds will always go back to the Wildland Firefighter Foundation. So if you're looking to get your hands on some sweet-ass merch, like all of their apparel that helps you rep that Wildland Firefighter culture, or all the tools of the trade to get your morning started off right, and kick-ass coffee for a kick-ass cause, well, head over to www.hotshotbrewing.com and check it out. But while you're there, check this out. Go over to that little section that says TAPPS. Yeah, it stands for the Anchor Point Podcast. And what can you get over there? Well, you can get some of our exclusive merch. Yeah, they support our cause by selling in some of our exclusive merch. Yeah, so if you are looking to get your hands on some of those Fire Fiend shirts or some of the Band of Brothers tees, well, look no further than www.hotshotbrewing.com. Go over there and check it out. The Anchor Point Podcast would also like to give a quick little shout out to our buddy Booze over at the Ass Movement. And you might be asking, well, what does the Ass Movement stand for? Probably something to do with butts or poop or something childish, but no, it stands for the Ass Movement stands for the Anti-Surface Shitting Movement, and it is a cause that's very near and dear to my heart. Why? Well, it is a human tragedy that people don't know how to bury their turds on public land. It's disgusting, and that shit needs to stop. So if you want to help spread the good word about burying your turds, go over to www.thefirewild.com and check out the Ass Movement. And check this out. Listeners to this podcast can get 10% off their entire order by entering the code AnchorPointAss10, all one word and number as in 10 at the end. Yeah. So once again, get the finest in poo-bearing propaganda over at www.thefirewild.com and check out the Ass Movement. The Anchor Point Podcast is also going to be brought to you by the Smoky Generation, also known as the American Wildfire Experience, also known as wildfireexperience.org. It's pretty badass. It is an organization that is telling the story of wildland fire. And if you haven't been over there, well, I highly suggest that you go over there and check it out. There's a collection of over 200 stories from all across the globe, dating all the way back to the 1940s, and it's telling the story of wildfire. It's pretty freaking epic. And also, I'm all about supporting, I guess, organizations that support our community. So check this out. Bethany has the Smoky Generation grants. They are awesome. So $500 is up for grabs for those folks that are telling the story of wildland fire. If your story is selected, well, yeah, opportunities there. So $500 could be yours. I know applications are going to be opening up here for the 2022 season here pretty quickly. But if you happen to be a writer, a blogger, a photographer, a cinematographer, anybody who's telling the story of Wildland Fire, well, now's your opportunity. So go over to www.wildfireexperience.org and check it out. Bethany, you have a kick-ass organization over there. Keep it up.
The views and opinions of this podcast do not reflect the views and opinions of the United States government, the Department of the Interior, the Department of Defense, the Department of Agriculture, the United States Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or any private, municipal, county, or state firefighting organization, any law enforcement agency, any medical provider, or any contractor employed by any federal agency.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. Hope everybody's doing well, and I hope everybody's enjoying that ride on the Sober October bandwagon. And yeah, for those folks that are choosing not to do Sober October, well, I encourage you to do a sober-ish October, using air quotes here. But I guarantee you, if you hop onto that train, the Sober October or sober-ish October train, your mental health is going to improve, your sleep's definitely going to improve, and your overall physical fitness and well-being will improve. So I encourage everybody out there to join in for the month of October. Then, yeah, do whatever you want. It's a free country. But with that being said, today on the show, we are going to talk to a particularly outspoken individual, particularly in the realm of the bullshit conspiracy theories that are circulating the internet out there. But he's also a hardcore advocate for the boots on the ground. Yeah. The wildland firefighters out there are facing some issues, and he is an advocate for those people and getting those issues changed. But not only that, we're going to talk about his past 30 years in the fire service, his the things that he's seen change not only with the agency but with wildfire itself, the frequency, the intensity, the scale, and the length of the seasons. We're going to talk about the community impact that has, particularly in the Plumas National Forest, where over the past 5 years, starting with the campfire, they have witnessed tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, all the way from the campfire to the Dixie Fire. So we're going to cover a lot of those subjects. It's an awesome episode. It's about 2.5 hours long, and it's epic. So sit down and listen, enjoy. But without further ado, I would like to introduce my good friend, Mr. Jeff Dupras. Welcome to the Anchor Point. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Anchor Point podcast. Today on the show, I've got my good friend, Jeff Dupras. What's going on, dude? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Brandon?
Not too bad. Just got a fresh fade. I'm like, I feel liberated, man. My boy over at Commonwealth cuts my hair. He's been cutting my hair for like 7 or 8 years, but yeah, it's been a long time since I've had a haircut. So shout out to my homie over at.
Yeah, it's been about 20 years since I've had a haircut.
Rocking the hard fade, huh?
That one. Yep.
Nice. Right on, man. So tell us about yourself.
My name is Jeff Dupras. I'm the division chief on the Mount Huff Ranger District on the Plumas National Forest. Got a family, 4 kids, wife, living outside of Quincy, Middle Valley, California. And came down to talk about our increased fire behavior, intensities, complexities, and see where it goes from there.
Nice, man. Well, yeah, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background. How'd you get into fire?
I started, almost 30 years ago, and on a trail crew. And much like many firefighters, I became a fill-in on a hotshot crew because someone got hurt. And that was out in Colorado, and I got to finish out the rest of the season with them. Mm-hmm. And that kind of started my career. After that short stint with the crew, I moved over to a helitack program and was rappelling out of Idaho before the big salmon super base. They had 4 rappel crews, and I was working out of Indianola, nice. Right on the Salmon River. Beautiful high country there, just right at the gates of the Frank Church Wilderness.
Epic.
Oh yeah, one of the highlights of my career for sure.
Nice.
And then, like any young kid, I wanted more more excitement and thought going to California would be a good hit. So I took off for the Los Padres and then up to the Plumas.
Nice. LP in the house and the Plumas, man.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you need any shot time or anything like that?
Very, very little. Just a couple years.
Yeah, same here, man.
Yeah, right at the very beginning of my career. So it's been 28 years since I've been on a crew.
Nice. So how do you get into a leadership role like this, man? I mean, you've had 30 years in the game and now you're pretty much sitting almost at the top of the forest as far as the fire side of things, right? What was the road to that?
I think that a little bit of his luck, being at the right place at the right time. So yeah, a little bit more about me. I've got 2 bio kids and 2 adopted kids, which are kind of part of the story of how I got to where I got to. And so we just got done with an international adoption. I had my helicopter out in, I think we were in Wyoming, and we were like a week into our adoption, and I had to take off for a roll.
No, really?
Out to Wyoming, right? And about halfway through the roll, my wife calls me and she says that she can't do this anymore and is freaking out with 4 children because we went from 2 to 4 really quick.
Just like that.
Right. Just like that. So I looked at my squad leader, Chris Volker, who then went on to be a Beckworth captain on the hotshot crew there and is a fuels BC on the Plumas. But I looked at him and I said, you got this, right? And he kind of looked at me kind of starry eyes and he's like, yeah, we'll make it work. And I jumped in my work truck, went home, and that was my last role with the Helitack crew. And I was fortunate enough that one of the battalion chiefs was retiring at the time. My division chief let me job shadow that guy for a few months. Mm-hmm. And then back then we were able to fill positions laterally, non-competitively. And so I non-competitively went into a battalion chief. And then when the division chief position came open, I jumped at the opportunity to run that district. I've been there for 15 years, coming up on 16. And so, it's a joy to serve these guys that work for me. I've got right around 90 firefighters in any given year, and I've got a really mature fire program. Some of the guys that I walk through the door with are still there.
Yeah.
So 15 years later. So several of the engine captains, battalion chiefs, and then some of the guys that work at the SO, we've all kind of grown up together within the district. And so it's a very kind of familial type of program.
Pretty tight knit, I can imagine.
It's really tight knit. It's I don't think I have any one of those guys that we're looking at probably close to a dozen guys that we've all worked together for the same amount of time on the same district. None of those guys have any problem coming in my office and tell me when I'm wrong.
No problem calling you on your stuff, huh?
Yeah, no, not at all.
That's probably a good thing though.
No,
it keeps
man,
you humble.
It's high accountability. It's kind of the opposite of top down. We get a lot of consensus on the district, which is nice. Whether I want that consensus or not, I'm going to get it. But there's a lot of freedom to speak your mind, and we got a lot of people with a lot of opinions, a lot of great ideas, and they definitely make me look good.
That's good, man. So now the Plumas has been getting like the shit end of the stick for the entire season this year. We've had the Beckworth complex, we've had the Dixie, and several other fires that were kind of all in the mix during those times. And we spent 69 days at a PL of 5.
Right.
And your district was at the forefront of that, right?
Yeah, we're the epicenter of that for sure. And we have been for a few years. You got to take it back to Campfire.
Yep.
Started on the district and just on the Feather River district. But we were integrated into that operation pretty deep. And we had multiple people who worked on my district and other places on the forest that lost their homes on that fire. And then, you fast forward a year and you get into the North Complex, where again, the majority of the damage though was done on the Feather River district, just because of the way the winds were blowing through the Middle Fork.
Those up canyon winds.
Right.
Yeah.
But we saw, destruction of Berry Creek and all the way down to Lake Oroville, which was at that point unprecedented, right? And yeah, it's just, it's a tough thing to swallow when you have those things. I was in Berry Creek doing evacuations and tried to make a stand at the work center, which we were able to save some buildings, but not others. Fairly traumatic experience for some with the fire behavior that we saw.
Understandably so.
And then still dealing with that trauma and some of our folks, we roll into, the Beckworth complex. I wasn't part of the Beckworth complex. I had a district to run on my side, but most of our folks spent time fighting fire over there. And, it sucks to be on the losing end of the stick, right? It's demoralizing. It's frustrating. And then, as we're dealing with the Beckworth complex, then we have the Dixie. The only good thing that's come out of the Dixie is that nobody died, unlike Paradise and Berry Creek, which all had multiple fatalities.
And that's one thing. I mean, you've been in the game for, you said 30 years, right? And you're on the LP, so you're not unaccustomed to extreme fire behavior. But just a curiosity question for you is, how has fire regime changed? How has fire behavior changed over the course of your time dealing with fire? I mean,
yeah, I could go all the way back to, being a scab on the hot shot crew. One of the roles that we had was kind of one of their bread and butter roles out there in Colorado, was go to the western slope of Colorado and then break up into like 5 or 6 different entities and go chase lightning fires.
Yeah, lightning mods.
Right? We don't do that with hot shot crews anymore, right? We've seen what I would call, the fun fires of getting away from the boss, having your own little mod on a little fire, camping out overnight, mopping it up, and then jumping in a helicopter and go and do another one. Yeah. Right. And that was our kind of our bread and butter. Then we, maybe pop 1,000-acre fire in South Dakota or somewhere else and go and be the only hotshot crew on that fire. Right. And go, put line in and then, and then fast forward from there, California always had large complex fires that you would go to, but large was like 30,000 acres, right? 40,000 acres. Those were big, fun fires. And every once in a while you'd get one of those national news fires that would come out of LA, and burn down some homes. And it was pretty tragic. And those are pretty rare. And then you come into kind of modern history of fighting fire, particularly in California. That's where I spent the most of my time. It's rare to not have structure protection, to not have some kind of structure component or complexity within our operational planning. It's the encroachment on the wildlands from folks that want to live in the woods and make their home in the woods like me. That's at a pace and scale that's unprecedented. As we sit here in the studio, you see the same thing with the desert landscape.
Absolutely.
Is that people are continuing to move out of the city centers and bump up against that interface. And that's not going to stop anytime soon.
Well, it's only one direction that we can go as a human nature.
And so, with wherever you land on climate change doesn't make a difference to me. What we have is a long-term drying and heating of our national forests, of our desert landscapes, of our Mediterranean terrain down in Southern California. And what we're seeing is the drying of the fuels, fire behavior that I hate using the word unprecedented too many times. Right. But we'll probably hear that a lot during this discussion because they're just things that I haven't seen through my 30 years. I've seen extreme fire behavior. I've been on, probably 20 of California's largest fires in my time as a firefighter. Mm-hmm. And they seem to keep leapfrogging each other, and sometimes in the same season. Right. And as we saw with the Mendocino complex last year, we broke records by just leapfrogging largest fire in history. Right.
Oh yeah.
Unprecedented.
Well, it's trending though.
It's trendy.
It's trending. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't see that slowing down anytime soon.
I don't think it is.
Right. We're seeing, 60-inch diameter trees, not just torching out, but being obliterated by these fire fronts, right? Which those trees have survived decades, hundreds of years. And in some cases, like you have with the sequoias down south in the Windy Fire right now, thousands of years.
Oh yeah.
And those things are showing mortality for the very first time in our history anyway.
And they're literally a fire dependent species.
They are fire dependent species, right?
And they're getting smoked by fire.
Correct. And
Jesus.
so, the fire behavior alone isn't the only complexity. And we mentioned the urban interface. And the urban interface, I think a lot of people get the idea of maybe like the Front Range in Colorado, Boulder, or Salt Lake City, or Los Angeles, or Santa Barbara, or stuff like that. But there's a rural interface as well. And those homes and those lives and those livelihoods are equally vested in their future, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so, any time that we have, you can take my district as a kind of a test case, right? Is anytime I would have 1,000-acre fire, right, which is a fairly significant fire,
especially in the forest, yeah.
Right? And especially in timber, you're gonna have a structure component, right? I can't go 1,000 acres either direction without having structures threatened.
And that's outbuilding, main building, everything.
Main buildings, residences, right? Anything. Ranches, in holdings, wreck cabins. And so, there's a lot of complexities that continue to grow. I don't know if there's any new complexities. They just keep getting worse and more extreme and more difficult to integrate into operational planning when we do have these larger fires.
Yeah, that's kind of it's kind of crazy to see this whole thing trending in one direction. We're year after year after year having more destructive, more intense, longer fire seasons, right? Like you just said, whether you believe in the climate change portion of that or not, I mean, it's a very complex relationship that we have with fire. We have fuel loading, we have droughts, we have climate change if you choose or choose not to believe in it. It's all of these things boiled into one, right?
Right. And you bring up a lot of different things there. We've got historically low fuel moistures on the Plumas, and I would imagine I don't really pay attention to my neighbors in the south, but I would imagine that they're dealing with the same things as well.
Oh, look at the snowpack that we've had this year is shit.
Yeah, normally where I'm at, California weather tends to spike and valley, and so grabbing a median is pretty tough. When you never have a median year, it's one or the other.
Yeah,
but getting 9 inches of rainfall and snow combined in the area that I live in. When we normally can get, 8 to 10 feet of snow and a few feet of rain. We started off in March. We kicked off in March and we haven't stopped.
That's an early fire season. Right. This is high elevation you're talking about, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. This is, high elevation for Plumas County is, 3,000, 4,000 feet. So we're not talking about, 10,000 feet or, alpine type of environment, but it's, we get, within 1,000 feet or so of coming to tree line.
Yeah.
Things that we haven't seen before. Especially on the Plumas, some of the areas that we see fire regularly are like the Feather River Canyon, out on the east side, and the east side pine, open story pine, running through the grass, running through the needles, pushing its way to the escarpment. That's a yearly event. And then, whether it's 10 acres or it's 1,000 acres or 100,000 acres, those fires are difficult because of how fast they move. But then you get up into the Bucks Wilderness, where we haven't had fire in my time. I think I've had one single tree that some folks hiked into in the 15 years that I've been on the
That's
Plumas.
actually in the wilderness area.
That's actually in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And then we saw the Dixie Fire early on spot across the Feather River Canyon, run up into our wilderness, and do a healthy dose of damage. Right, there's some good fire in there for what that's worth, but it's outweighed by the severity that we're seeing over the landscape.
And that's another thing too, is like, we were getting into this era of gigafires, I believe is what the term they've coined for it specifically. And then Stephen Prine, he's also introduced the Pyrocene era.
Right.
When you have, the August complex, right? That was
on the Mendocino.
Right? That's 1.2 million acres. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, multiple fires.
Yeah, multiple fires. I mean, they complex it, so it's, obviously a multiple fire complex. It's complex. But as far as a single fire, we're holding the record on the Dixie, right?
I believe that's true. Yeah.
Almost 1 million acres.
Yeah, 970,000 acres.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. It's Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I've worked on incident management teams for the last 12, 13 years as a operations section chief, branch director, division, task force leader, air ops, air support. These things continue to grow and get more complex. But I think the real complexity for us on the Plumas is more of like a psycho-emotional type of complexity of constantly having these large conflagrations on our forest. We lost folks in Paradise. We had fatalities in Berry Creek. We had a fire get out of kind of a shaky containment and run for the escarpment and burn down homes in Doyle. And then Greenville, Indian Falls, Rush Creek, Twain, all the losses we had there. Butterfly Valley with the fly fire that kind of careened into the Dixie fire. It takes that complexity of that rural wildland interface fire to the next level when you're protecting your neighbors.
Yeah.
And when you're afraid for your neighbor's safety, we're not just talking about like regular safety, someone crashing a car or someone getting burned. We've had fatalities
from the fire, directly.
Civilian fatalities, right? Year after year. And so that's on the back of everybody's mind, right? We were pretty blessed that we had no fatalities in Plumas County because there were plenty of opportunity. We had people staying at their homes in these little hamlets in the Feather River Canyon and the Highway 89 corridor headed towards Greenville. And, I couldn't be happier to think that, that we didn't lose anybody. But now we're continuing the trend of wiping towns off the map this year, right? We had fire come into Doyle. We had fire come into Greenville. We had fire going into Indian Falls. Those places don't exist anymore, right?
No, they're gone.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Right. And those are my friends' homes, my coworkers' homes. And that's a heavy, heavy, heavy burden.
These are people that you live next door to. I mean,
people I live next door to.
You're face to face, know them. Yeah.
Yeah. I live out in Meadow Valley, and as a crow flies, I've got the Dozer line, and the fire's edge is 1/4 mile, 3/4 of a mile from my house. Somewhere there. So, we were evacuated. My family was evacuated for 27 days. Bucks Lake and Meadow Valley were the first communities that were threatened. So we had one of the longer evacuations other than Greenville. All those things take a toll. I had to send my family to Colorado just so I could do my job appropriately and not worry about their safety.
Yeah. So, well, you're evacuating your family, and then you also have a job to do, which is in your back door. Right. It's right off your backyard.
Right. And we were actively involved as a district, even with the incident management team on the district. We were providing what we had a surge capacity that we were trying out that we had seen done on other forests, where you keep some of your district resources back and you kind of shuffle those around to where they're needed most. And what that did was allow us to be part of the prioritization process and still have some control, because generally you give up ground when you have an incident management team on your district.
Yeah, on your home turf.
Right. Yeah, it's not really your home turf. You're just kind of an advisor to those guys, and they hit you up for phone numbers and where roads are. Right.
Yeah.
And,
local knowledge.
Local knowledge. Right.
Yeah.
And this time we definitely had skin in the game with our own homes threatened, our neighbors threatened. I was really proud to see how my folks responded to that. Most of those guys were still on their trucks when their house burned down, right? They were still fighting fire in other people's yards when their homes burned down. So yeah, I think, that also comes with the maturity in the program that we talked about earlier, is that I've been working with these guys for 15 years. We have a common goal. We have common objectives, and our integrity is fairly high and mature, and that we want to make sure that we're taking care of our communities. But it's been a rough go. There's a lot of pushback when a town doesn't just have structures burn, right? That's hard enough. But when you wipe the town off the map, it's a whole different sinking feeling.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of the population is not happy with our response, is not happy with what they're hearing from their neighbors. And that's a difficult thing to go through. When you put it all out there, when you hang it all out, and it's not enough, you can't stop it.
Yeah.
And people don't understand how difficult it is when you've got 100-foot wall of flame coming through town.
Yeah. It's not like you can stop this though. I mean, this is like the perfect storm of what's going on. I mean, it's the perfect storm of wooey meets aggressive extreme fire behavior. And you're also an appeal of 5. I mean, there's nobody left to fight these fires. And you can throw all the people in front of this thing. You're not going to do anything.
Right. God bless our contractors that come up and help us. But it's, you don't have that same cohesiveness as you do within an agency or within a district.
Yeah.
Where everybody knows everybody's next move. I don't know what type of resources it would have taken to keep Greenville. There were probably some homes that we could have saved with some more resources. Kind of on the ancillary flanks of this of the fire as it came down. But in my job, and when I went out with the surge capacity to go help the team division out there, we had come to the point where we said, it's going to be really hard not to burn the whole town down. It was already midtown.
Yeah.
And we had a frank discussion on what is going to be needed if this town is ever going to rebuild, because it was plainly obvious that we were going to lose the town. So we started prioritizing the high school, the grocery store, gas station, things like that.
Just whatever was
tried the business district, but the business district is, pretty typical to Western towns where all the buildings are connected to each other. And so fire just has that railway right through those row buildings.
Yeah.
And we were able to grab some of those, but not all of them. When I make those decisions, when I'm out with a team or when I'm away from the home unit, those decisions come very easy. It's fairly black and white of what we need to do.
But now it's personal,
right? It's personal. I was standing on the way out with the fire kind of chasing us out. I came across one of my friends, coworker, and he was standing in his yard trying to protect his home. Right. And he's on the day off. So he's out there with a garden hose and right. And, when I tell him it's time to go and see how defeated he is, how do you stop from crying? Or like right there for him. Right. And, so these are difficult times for us. And, to know that we didn't have the horsepower to stop it. And I don't even think if we had double or triple or quadruple the resources, you can't put a fire truck in front of a wall of flame and expect them to put it out. It's not how things work, right? You get 650 gallons and you're not gonna put that out. You're gonna vaporize your whole crew. And we're lucky that nobody got hurt. There were plenty of trucks coming out backwards.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And it was that kind of close. And people don't get to see, excuse me, people don't get to see that kind of fight. I mean, they're evacuated, and even those that stay, your sight picture is local in nature, right?
Yeah. So
if you don't see a truck around your house, you automatically assume that there's no trucks around anybody's homes. And we had, approximately 30, maybe 40 engines and a couple of hand crews that were going direct before the fire came in. When that thing started to blow out, that's not enough to, there's 1,200 folks or so, they're residents of Greenville. That's not enough vehicles and not enough apparatus to protect every home. And then the fire behavior kind of trumped that altogether. And it was like, hey, we need to fall back to the homes that are on the flanks of this. That's the best that we can do at this point.
Well, I saw the time lapse from the camera, the mountaintop camera before it got burned over, of how fast that came down the hill and into the valley.
Right.
It was impressive, man. I don't know how many hours it was, but it wasn't very many.
No, it didn't take very long. It started coming down. At first, the fire was kind of coming down, and we thought we were going to pick it up. We put a couple hotshot crews in there. trusted brothers of mine. They were doing a good job. They were making hay. Engines were backing them up. They were getting good knocked down. The wind started picking up and it started marching downhill. And the flame front was fairly impressive at that point. We were looking at, 25, 30, 40 foot flame lengths. And so, it became kind of untenable, with hose lays and hot shot crews at that point. And then, as the winds continued to pick up, we were looking in that 50 to 100 at times, flame lengths backing fire.
Which is impressive even in itself. I mean, you don't get that kind of fire behavior usually marching downhill.
Not usually.
Usually.
Yeah. We saw similar, kind of less extreme, version of what we saw in Berry Creek. Berry Creek was a downhill push, but pushed with the wind. And this was somewhat similar. The difference was, in Berry Creek, on the North Complex, we had like 2 mile spotting, and we were having active spotting, but it was a half mile, kind of at the longest. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it took everybody. We had SPI folks, the local, timber company out there with their heavy equipment, working with CAL FIRE. We,
pretty much all hands on deck.
Right. Yeah. And the at this point, the Dixie Fire was still zoned, right? And had a CAL FIRE was on the north end. I guess they were calling it west, even though it was north. And then the southern end, was under, Forest Service or federal, control with their EMT or IMT. And, it was completely blurred at that point. I mean, we were trying to everything from Greenville up to Chester, sharing resources and trying to get this thing into some kind of containment. But ultimately, Lake Almanor and some pretty aggressive timber harvesting over on SPI land was what kind of helped us get some of that stuff in check. And when the winds died down in the evening, it was like it almost disappeared.
Just laid down, and we were able to start picking things up. And if we had a few more hours with that fire on the hillside, Greenville would still be here. But it was a pretty awful night. Yeah. And that's another thing too, is you mentioned spotting in there from the previous fire, the Berry Fire, right? Or Berry Creek, right?
Berry Creek.
Yeah, Berry Creek fire, mile, half mile spotting. Now, there has been rumors of the fire behavior on the Dixie Fire being so extreme that it's actually spotted 5 miles. I mean, is that?
I didn't witness any of that, but I wasn't assigned to any of the incident management teams that had come through. I chose to stay back on the district and be the FMO and be that local contact for all of our cooperators that were having questions. We got a great relationship with the sheriff's department. If Sheriff Todd Johns is going to listen to this, he did a hell of a job, even though people picked him apart for evacuating too soon or too late or too long or whatever.
You're putting yourself in an impossible situation there from also the local unit, but also him as well. Right. I mean, how do you tell people to leave? Yeah. He's a guy you should probably hit up and have on your show sometime and get a law enforcement perspective of these conflagrations, because he had the toughest job out of all of us. It's his job to hold the whole community together. Yeah. So, I can imagine you'd be the most well-liked person at that point. I mean, you got all of this coming down upon you at once with the Dixie Fire, right? You're trying to evacuate towns and these other communities and these other at-risk communities. Yeah. How do you maintain your composure, one, and how do you maintain your relationship with the community afterwards? So Plumas County is, it's a little bit of everything, all shook up into one. Yeah. We've got far right, far left, all kinds of folks in the middle, and opinionated is kind of what the county is known for, right? Mm-hmm. But somehow we all make it work, and we've made it work for years and years and years. With the onset of COVID, with the Dixie and the North Complex, and with the Beckworth Complex, I'd like to say there's moments of where we see the best of us, and there is. Yeah. There's also moments where we're seeing the worst of us. We're hitting fire fatigue. We're hitting COVID fatigue for sure. Oh yeah. And everything that kind of swirls around that, everything that you're seeing on the national news that never used to affect our community is now affecting our community. And the very
threads that weave us together are starting to split. And it's a shame because we are tight. We're a bunch of goofballs up there with all kinds of crazy ideas of how the world should be.
Yeah.
But we don't even really have to worry about it because we're insulated there.
Yeah.
And somehow we've allowed ourselves to fracture. And putting that back together, I hope is easier than it sounds.
I'm pretty sure it's a long road ahead, especially when a devastated community has to come back together and rebuild. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of damage there.
Right?
A lot of damage.
There's trust won and lost. There's anybody who wears a uniform up there right now, kind of feels the heat for what they did right and what they did wrong. And I've had it pointed out to me, all the things that we've done wrong. And I think when they point it to me, they're pointing at the agency as a whole and all the teams that came through. And some of those things are very valid. Right. Yeah. And, Dixie Fire in itself is a story of lost opportunities. Right.
Majority of fires are though.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right. Yeah. So, to move in real time, once you bring an incident management team in, to move in real time is really tough, right?
That's impossible.
Because you've got official briefings, you've got all the things that you need to do and logistics that you need to have in place for your people to be able to operate. And so things actually slow down instead of pick up when you bring a team in. You get a more cohesive strategy, you get a landscape scale plan, and your containment starts to become a little easier, but overall it's a slower process just because of the planning process and things that you have to go through. But when you're a structure fire, no hit to my brethren in the red trucks, but you roll up to a house fire, you got to be perfect for a half hour.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're perfect for a half hour, you probably got a hold of that house and maybe you get a good save. Right. For us to not have anything go wrong, we've got to be perfect for 14, 21 days, 30 days, 60 days, 69 days, right? That we're on right now. And you got to do that for 16 hours a day. And that's really an untenable expectation. We had some missed opportunities and they cost us and they cost our community.
I'm sure that wasn't all to do with, the fire itself. It's also circumstance too. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about what's going on with the fire behavior and the fire, I guess, landscape these days, right?
Oh, absolutely. In all the things that people point out to us, and it's no secret that we have way too much vegetation on our landscape, especially on the Plumas. We've got a brush understory, timber overstory.
Look at Caldor.
That's about as most dangerous as you can get when you're fighting fire, right? Mm-hmm. We've got the terrain that doesn't help you with that. And we can make tons of excuses on those things and point out the science behind all of how fire moves across the landscape and what different fuel types and fuel moistures and live fuel moistures, dead fuel moistures, winds and relative humidity that all come together.
Have a computer program for this,
right. And it all crashes together to give you some extreme fire behavior, and it's been crashing for a few years now. And but when we do have those windows of opportunity, we need to be aggressive and take those opportunities, and we miss some of those, and we got to own that, right? Yeah. There's no perfect fire. I've learned over 33 years that there's no perfect fire.
No, it doesn't matter if it's a single tree or type 1 incident or
no. I mean, we lost a friend of ours on a single tree lightning strike up on the Modoc, and he was hit by a limb and passed away. These things happen, and they're random, and they suck, and they're heartbreaking, and they make me want to rip what's left of my hair out, right? And but that's the reality, right? There's no rewind, there's no do-over in fire. You make a mistake at your keyboard, you hit backspace. I make a mistake, someone gets hurt, or we lose something, or things don't get done right.
There's very real world consequences.
Real world consequences. I like to say that we make real decisions in real time that have real effect on real people. That's my job, and I won't always hit it.
Well, that's the thing is like Mark Booker was on the show previously, and he says he never wants to be good at something. He wants to be proficient, right? Because good has an expiration date.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, same concept applies, man. You have to do the best that you can constantly and you've been doing it for 30 years, you know?
Yeah.
Sorry, my dogs are whining, man.
That's okay. I've got
wildly
dogs.
Annoying.
And bringing that up, so the guys that are in my class, right, that came up at the same time as me, the class of whatever, we're not writing the book on extreme fire fighting, right? It's the youngsters that are behind us that are writing the book for this, because we didn't come up with this. The guys who have worked for me for the last, let's say 8 to 10 years, they've seen more fire in that 8 to 10 years than I've seen in my whole career.
Jesus,
right?
That's a statement.
Right. And they're the ones writing the book. They're the ones who are going to change this agency. They're the ones that are going to take this thing to the next level, because we're woefully unprepared for what we have on our landscape right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And if we rewind and we talk about going back to the landscape and having, the X amount of tonnage of fuels on the ground, it's just not on federal land, right? It's on private property. It's on state-owned property. I mean, we have even in Plumas County, where we have multiple fires and people are very adept at living in the woods and living with fire. We have super low compliance, including myself at my house, with defensible space laws in California. These are, my own home is not in compliance, right? And neither are my neighbors. And
you're in the game,
yeah. So we have skin in the game, and so as homeowners and as residents of high fire areas, like we need to understand that we've got some take and some skin in the game in our own success. And that's not a firefighter issue. That's
an understanding.
And it's a community issue. And I'm always going to, I hope through the rest of the interview, we keep coming back to community, because rebuilding the community, reestablishing community, rebuilding trust in the community are way more important to me than stopping any fire or bringing our forest back into some kind of stasis. Rehab, repair, suppression repair, or salvage logging or anything like that is completely secondary to what I want to see for Plumas County, for Greenville, for Quincy, for Meadow Valley, for Beckworth, for Mohawk, all those communities, Portola, that have suffered fire after fire after fire after fire and are wore out. I want to see some kind of respite and some rest and some community rebuilt. That is my goal in the few years that I have left in this occupation.
You've witnessed a lot of tragedy over the course of 5 years?
Yeah.
And it's all localized to, a lot of it is localized to your forest. I mean,
it is.
I wish I had like a one size fits all solution to how we could communicate the needs of the community, but we don't really. I mean, it's hard, man. It's hard. How do you fix that?
I don't know if you fix it or you endure it, right?
I mean,
but how you pop out the other side is, I think that's what our grandfathers would call character, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of rural communities are resilient to begin with, but I mean, if you look at, Lassen County, they don't have much to begin with. And I don't know what the landscape of this, I guess, socioeconomic spectrum of Plumas County looks like. But taking away tourism, which is going to be a big huge hit to you guys. Yeah. The ranching community, the logging community, all of this stuff is going to take a hit, and how we come back from that is going to be a long road, but it needs to happen cohesively, right? We need to come together.
We take the simplest of things. My passion is mountain biking, and also being part of the trail stewardship and promoting Plumas County as a destination spot. All those things, everywhere I go, I brag about our trails, about what we have going on, how things are moving forward. And how do you turn this gigantic mountain of a roadblock into a speed bump, right? And that I don't have the answers to that, but I'm in it for the long haul. I'm all in.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping for is the core of our community to be all in as well. And I think they are. It's just there's a lot of induced trauma into Plumas County. It's brought on a lot of finger pointing and a lot of blame, a lot of negativity, and I know that we're better than that as a community. But when those fingers are pointed at you as an individual, and I can handle it pretty appropriately when we point fingers at the agency. Like any government entity, it's full of bureaucracy. We move slow. I mean, that's just part of being part of the federal government.
Yeah, 100%.
When it becomes personal, and we're out there trying to make the best choices we can to protect our communities and other people's communities. It's heartbreaking. When I hate to say it this way, when Greenville did burn down, my guys did a hell of a job.
They did everything they could.
Yeah. And they lost. Right. Sometimes it's like watching your favorite team get creamed. Right. It just, it's even hard to talk about. I'm watching people lose relationships that are decades in the making. Right. And we talked earlier about how we cross political lines so easily in Plumas County, or we used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's pretty rough. I got for myself, we've got random people calling my cell phone, dropping me cute little notes on Facebook that aren't super friendly. Completely made up things like we let things burn, or that we prioritized the Lake Almanor area over Greenville because they have more money, things like that. And these rumors start building momentum and they start to become truth. And it's really hard to throw those things in reverse, even when presented with the truth, right? I've offered everybody in the community the opportunity to walk them through any part of our operations that I was privy to. There's some that I'm not. I mean, it was a 1 million acre fire, and I'm a single
huge
district FMO. But in the areas that I was in Indian Falls and in Greenville and Berry Creek, and once I offered that, a lot of those things just went away. I'm like, I'll come to your house right now. We'll jump in a truck and we'll go talk about what we did.
Yeah. Kind of show them what's going on and explain it from your point of view.
Yeah, we're small enough that we can do that. When I worked in Santa Barbara, we probably couldn't do that, but we can do that here. That's the kind of community we're in. But it's a tough one for me. I've had a tough time processing that, not only personally, but professionally as well. I just stuck my neck out. Put people in positions that, had it not been our communities, I don't know if I would have put them in it, right? If we were away from Plumas County and wrestling with that guilt already, putting people in a certain amount of risk that I normally wouldn't put them in. And then to come out with a bunch of fuck yous was not what I expected.
No, I couldn't imagine that's what you're expecting. I mean, and that's got to put you in a traumatized position.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the any of the trauma that I think that I've experienced, and it's a good opportunity to talk about it. Nobody at the top usually talks about their own trauma, right? They talk about the trauma of their community, their trauma of their guys. But I can tell you, I made a really piss poor call up at Berry Creek, kegged a whole bunch of resources, about 65 folks up in the parking lot at the Brush Creek fire station right in the middle, right above Berry Creek. Mm-hmm. And the fire came through like a bat out of hell, and burned over the station. We sheltered in place, no shelter deployments, but sheltered in place, and scared the shit out of a whole lot of people, and myself included.
You were in that mix?
Oh yeah, I was in that mix. Yeah. I was the chief officer there at the time. So that was put a whole lot of people at risk, right? And so in my entire career, I've never been that close to that kind of fire, and it really didn't stop anything. We burned some buildings down on the compound directly across the street from us, where were some of the fatalities that happened in Berry Creek. And so, you carry that guilt when you make those decisions, and those decisions go wrong, right? And we had people who didn't come back the next year, and so carrying the weight of that, there's quite a bit of trauma in that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not only was I afraid for my own safety, but I had 60 folks that were kegged up in a small parking lot that took it on the chin and did a hell of a job, and but we didn't really do anything, right? And so,
well, what could you do?
At that point, it was, grab onto something and hold on, right?
Yeah,
and
ride it out.
Yeah, and the biggest thing we had was fear, right? But when you're at the top and you make those decisions and you put people in those situations, there's a lot of guilt that comes with that, and there's a lot of processing that comes with that. I don't think that anybody who in my position that has close calls that were responsible for the people on either their division or their district or as operations make a bad call. You always wrestle with that, right? And wrestling with the year after year after year traumatic type of fire behavior and risk that we're putting our folks in is taking a tremendous toll on my soul. And I doubt I'm the only one.
I guarantee you're not. I mean, the subject of mental health and the traumas that we endure year after year after year with increasing fire behavior, the climate change, all of this stuff, the wooey that we're encountering, and the frequency and intensity of fires. I mean, it's only snowballing for everybody, man. We're approaching a mass burnout, and you've been at this game for 30 years, man.
Yeah, I don't think we're approaching it. I think we arrived at the station. I think that there is, there's a fatigue at a level I haven't seen before. We talked about unprecedented fire behavior, unprecedented fuel moistures, unprecedented drought. We're at unprecedented fatigue. This used to be when I was a young kid in the game. I'd start some point like in mid-May, and I'd work through the end of July, mid-August, and then we'd be back to school or going, dirt bagging, climbing, or biking somewhere.
Yeah, go down to Bishop and climb. Right. Or something.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. And that was a fairly normal fire season. 90 days and you're out. And when I said at the beginning that we took our first fire in March, or in early March at that, and it didn't stop. And we can talk about the fire, the Beckworth complex that was earlier on. To have that kind of fire behavior so early in the year.
Yeah.
And then you can talk about, Dixie, and you can talk about North Complex, and you can talk about, the August Complex or whatever. But, you can you can probably put a name to 15 or 20 fires a year that you remember, right? But nobody remembers, the 33,000 fires that we put out last year in the region.
No, they only remember the tragedy.
Give me the 33,000 other firefighter names, right? That we fought. The other 33,000 incidents that we had. No one bats an eye at that, right? But when these things get out and they go big, then you're famous.
Oh yeah, literally. I mean, national news is going to be on that fire
right
immediately. I mean, look at how fast it was in like the KMP complex, right? Which is still going.
Yeah.
I mean, you got giant sequoias.
Right. National treasures, right?
Yeah, national treasures. I mean, you got the entire Plumas forest. You got the entire Mendocino almost in its entirety, right?
Right.
It's where do we go from here, though? I mean, what do we do? I mean, I'm even coming to a point where like, oh yeah, I mean, I've stuck to my convictions of like, oh yeah, this is what we need to do. We need to do X, Y, and so to like manage the landscape and be prepared and develop communities into fire-wise communities. But in actuality is that we just don't know what to expect anymore.
Well, and funding is always a tricky thing as well. That's usually what drives everything.
True.
And I've got my own opinions on that. It's probably not real popular within the agencies, but since I started, I've always wondered why there's 5 distinct firefighting federal firefighting.
I know where this is heading, man.
In Wildland,
I'm
right?
on board, dude. I'm on board with this idea. I know where this is heading.
And whether those entities stay within land management or not, that's not up to me to decide.
Yeah.
But I'll stick with the agency that I'm in. We used to have stovepiped organizations. There weren't very many of them, but there were some in Southern California. I know there was one on the western slope of Colorado that was fairly effective and had kind of conjoined Park Service and BLM and Forest Service together.
True interagency operations.
Yeah, true interagency operations. But the type of fire and the duration of the fires that we're going to are still operating on the same plan that I had when I walked through the door 30 years ago, right?
A little outdated.
Right. It's tremendously outdated. And you understand that, when you work with large government entities, it's the same with state entities as well. Things don't change on a dime, right? And by the time you get to be where our new chief is, Randy Moore, your time is limited. He's not going to be the chief for 20 years.
No,
right?
He's got an expiration date.
Everybody's got an expiration date, right? And so he can have all the best ideas in the world and start implementing a plan, and those things can get cut pretty quick, right? It's easier to cut something than to see it through its fruition.
Yeah.
But my take is that under its current state is that our fire program has outgrown its container.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And so the things that we are doing now, and the duration and the intensity and the frequency is not reflected in the system that we have put together. 30 years ago and beyond that, we were working 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, right? That's what we do on a daily basis, right? Mm-hmm. But yet we see how many fires do we have in the middle of the night? How many fires, and we don't have the right staffing. We don't pay our folks commensurate to the risk that they're taking. That's a big one for us, right? I think it's expensive. It's expensive to live. Out here in Washoe County is getting very expensive. Oh, yeah. Where you're at, and then up in California, just right across the border is always expensive. You throw on a 20% California tax, right? And, to anything, and we've got guys that are working. At this point, you have to be a GS7 before you even cross the line of the poverty line on the California side. So
it doesn't matter where you're at typically.
Right. And it doesn't matter. And it only gets worse as you move south, right?
Yep.
And, but even Northern California is expensive. Quincy's expensive to live in. So we have all those issues that are just kind of exploding out of this jack in the box all at once, right? And we got fire behavior increasing, fire season duration, is lengthening. Our pay is not commensurate.
It's shit.
And it doesn't keep up with inflation from year to year. So it's all kind of coming together and kind of spilling out of the container. And maybe that container needs to be enlarged, and maybe it needs to be different. Maybe we need to go to a more efficient, within the agencies, back to a stovepipe type of organization where everybody speaks the same language within the chain of command, and that we don't take these weird elbows over to line officers and back over to agency administrators, and it's a little bit more straightened, a little bit easier,
run more like a paramilitary organization, like we operate like.
Right. Yeah. And recognizing the people, I think there's a handful of folks, probably more than a handful of folks that would just take a change in title would would make them a little bit more stoked to be doing what they do, right?
Absolutely.
So
We're not even recognized as firefighters.
So we got on the BLM side, we got range techs?
Not anymore. So, well, at least in Region 4, they transitioned over to forestry technicians.
Right? How much forestry work do they do a year, right? And in the same thing, every once in a while, my guys might pay a picnic table, but most of the time, from the time they start, they're either training or fighting fire. And
we're doing prescribed fire.
Right.
Which is probably the closest thing you're going to get to forestry management.
Right. And if I was to reintroduce myself, it would be, hello, I'm Jeff Dupras. I'm the miscellaneous program supervisor for Mount Huff Ranger District's fire program, right?
Yeah.
It's, I've got one of the larger districts in California, one of the larger districts in the country. And I'm a miscellaneous program manager, but the guy who sits in the office next to me is a biologist, right? And I don't get a title. I don't get recognized for what I do. Nope. And although that may be petty for a 50-year-old man, I'm going to be petty on this one, right?
You've earned every right to be petty on it, though. Right. That's the thing. You've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are things that I think are doable, right?
Yeah.
And doable within the agency.
Oh, 100%.
We have models that were effective before, and I think that they can be tweaked to see how much better they would work now. And but yeah, it's there's a language barrier, right? And there's a culture barrier. Both. It's tough to put in the folks that are ologists, our biologists, our archaeologists, our foresters, and our hydrologists. They're all great people. Super stoked. Love the whole side of the land management aspect of the Forest Service. And it's not to belittle what they do, but those two cultures don't stack well.
No.
Right. And we need something that stacks better for the complexities that we're seeing now.
Absolutely.
We need to be able to move faster with the complexities that we're seeing now. We need to be able to talk faster, make decisions faster. We need to move faster. And I don't think we can do that as we continue to spill out of that really tiny container that constricts you from what we can do.
I also think that container overflow is leading to a lot of attrition in our numbers as well.
Yeah. And I think there's some of that. And I think there's also, there's so many things that you can do that are more lucrative and you get more time off. Right.
You can go flip burgers at In-N-Out for $17, $18 an hour these days.
And some of this is a self-inflicted wound inside the fire culture, right? So, part of it's pay, right?
Yeah.
If we paid people appropriately, if we maybe had a different schedule, whether that's a 24-hour schedule, whether that's a 4-10 schedule, where it's a combination of whatever, depending upon what season. But, we've been doing 24-hour staffing in California for a few years now. And, it's rough when the majority of your time is 9:30 to 6, and then a random day the duty officer decides you're going to roll a 24, right? So it's just
crushing.
But part of our culture is, and a lot of it's because of pay, is to never get left back on an assignment, right?
Oh yeah, we're chasing that tail, man.
To go because you need that overtime to feed your family, and we need to get the pay commensurate where people don't need overtime to feed their family. In California, I can't speak for the other regions. I'd be talking out my butt because I haven't worked out a region in a very long time. Mm-hmm. But in other regions, I would assume that in some areas it's a decent job and it pays commensurate sort of with where folks are at. I don't
Probably
believe that's
high enough GSL,
right? Yeah, but I don't think that's true anywhere west of Denver, right?
Oh, so no. There's no way.
And it really is a Western problem. You have more states out towards the east. You've got more political clout east of Denver. We've got great big states, and we also have great big problems. Mm-hmm. But we don't have the rest of the country can't synchronize with what we're doing because they don't understand Western wildfire. Right? They don't deal with it, just like we don't deal with hurricanes. Right?
Yeah, that's the thing, though. I mean, you bring that hurricane point up, right? I mean, when you boils down to it, wildland firefighters, forestry technicians, they are jacks of all trades.
Yes,
they fall under FEMA, right? They can respond to any natural disaster. Hell, they even responded to the shuttle disaster, right?
Yeah, and the Twin Towers, everything. So our incident management teams are involved in all of that.
So it's not just sequestered to the West Coast.
Right.
Wildfire is somewhat uniquely West Coast, but I mean, look at the RX programs that they have in like Florida per se.
Yeah. Well, when you look at, you've got BIA, BLM, the Park Service, the Forest Service, and Department of Defense, all field firefighters in different capacities. When you talk about switching containers, that could also be switching agencies, right? Or combining all those things together where you have, when you're talking about people and you take away the political side of the agency's grip on their people, right? But when we talk about the what would be best for the country, maybe it is better that you go with a standalone agency that does everything, and you have different core elements that could take you in multiple directions in your career. But the culture right now is work, so you can feed your family, right? And that was very valid when our fire seasons were 90 days, or you were funded for 110 days on a crew. Now we're going towards 26 and O's, full-time firefighters, full-time forestry technicians.
Out of necessity,
right? Because we fight fire from March till November. It's the burnout is to be expected, but the culture doesn't change in that. So it's still go in March. And it's still go in November.
And when you're laid off, it doesn't stop.
And it doesn't stop, right? And so how do we change the culture? And some of that would have to be, if we did anything, would have to be forced, right? And part of that is compensating, or the majority of that is compensating our people correctly. If we compensate our people correctly, they're going to go watch the Little League game.
Yeah.
They're going to go watch their daughter go off to homecoming dance like I did the other night. Right? They're going to have that opportunity to raise a family correctly and make a living. And they can't do that right now. And it's difficult to watch as a division chief. I watch these families crumble or struggle. And I remember those very same struggles that we had. And they're only exacerbated as we continue to move west into California. And I don't have all the answers, but I know that we can do better than what we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. And that whole pay thing, we were at, the lowest common denominator was previous to this year, $13.45 an hour, right? That's GS3. That's your average starting wage.
We used to start guys at GS2s.
I know.
It's only a few years back that we stopped doing that.
Yeah, it wasn't very long ago, man. But now, it's minimum of $15 an hour, which is cool, whatever, it's great for somebody, I guess, who just wants it as a college summer job.
Yeah. And that used to be the thing, right? There were folks that wanted the appointment, and they were always chasing the appointment, the permanent appointment.
Shit, I was one of them, dude.
Right. And that was very difficult up until about 2000 when we increased the number of crews and engines and personnel that we had. But for those that are temporary, the kids that just came in for adventure or wanted to go to school, and I can't I can't speak for the other regions, but for California, that's difficult because we could, if we hire a student like we used to, or we hire an adventurer like we used to, those people want to split and go do their thing. They want to go to school, they want to go climb that mountain, or they want to go skiing, and they want out, in October. And we're not done in October.
No, we are not. We're far from done.
And I'm going to call you back for some of the best spring skiing of your life, right?
Yeah.
So it's the adventure side of it has really shrunk, especially in California.
Oh yeah. The people that are still around are still just doing it for the sunsets, man.
Yeah. And I would assume, just watching the SIT report and even having some orders down to New Mexico and Arizona, watching Region 3's fire season just continue to lengthen. And it's still a little ways away from where ours is. Mm-hmm. And they get a more predictable monsoon. But it used to be 4th of July weekend, and we could count Region 3 out, and we were ready for California, right? Yeah,
you're going into regular fire season for you guys.
Right, regular fire season, and then we got
use that term loosely.
Yeah, and now we got we have rainforests on the coast of Oregon and Washington, and seeing significant conflagrations there as well. Like, just kind of blows my mind that those things are still out of the box for me, and they're fairly normal for the youngsters now that are coming in and doing a good job. They just think that this is every day, and that's because it is.
Yeah, it is now. Right. Even when I started out, it wasn't like that.
No.
Yeah. I think the biggest, like when I first started out, I think my first campaign fire was a station fire. And now we're having, fires with acreage that dwarf that
Yeah, right.
5-fold,
Yeah,
10-fold.
Well, up until recently, the Chips fire was the largest fire that we had on the Plumas, and that was 60,000 acres. And it took 6 weeks to get that thing under control. And when it went from the Feather River Canyon up to the shore of Lake Almanor, it took 16 hours for the what do you call it? The Dixie fire to run through that same footprint.
Jesus.
Right? So
did you guys wasn't there like 100,000 acre run in a day? One operational shift or something like that?
I couldn't quote any of that. I'm not sure, but I know that, I went for a flight the other day and there's some, 50,000 acre chunks that are all high severity and nothing standing. It's pretty heart wrenching. Around Quincy itself, we've got a nice mosaic view, and that's kind of what you want to see.
Yeah.
But everything's hidden behind in the middle fork on the other side. You have the North Complex from last year that just smoked out the middle fork, and then on the other side towards Genesee Valley, there's some big holes over there, Indian Valley, and the view shed from the American Valley where Quincy, Middle Valley kind of reside is all intact all the way through Portola. I mean, it looks like you normally would, except for some stuff from the North Complex from last year. But this is a devastating event for us, and it's a devastating 5 years for us on the Plumas. It's taken it to a new level. The best we can do with the time that I have with the agency is look at the remaining WUI corridors, the Wildland Urban Interface corridors, and just keep pushing and pushing and pushing for those to be the priority. I already don't do fuels projects out in the middle of nowhere. They don't make sense. So I always target them towards the WUI area.
I mean, you have to reprioritize because you only have a finite amount of bodies as well, man, which kind of brings back to the attrition rates and the pay thing too. I mean, if you were to, pay people and give them a quality of life that they quite frankly deserve, well, that's also going to attract new applicants too.
Right.
We're running out of people, man.
Absolutely.
Hundreds of years each year in attrition of experience.
If it was Jeff Dupras' take, I'd pull fire out of the land management agencies, not out of spite, but out of efficiency, and then try to get a similar type of organization that was just fuels and timber and the budget that those things carry, put back into those agencies so they can actually do their job, which is to manage the land. Right? Yeah. Fire is a part of managing land, but the firefighting, the suppression side of things has outgrown the original intent of the land management agencies. And now it's urban, right? And that's a whole different complexity that a land management agency shouldn't have to take on.
I don't think they have the resources in the first place.
Right. And it's not the right fit. Right. But, and that's just one person's opinion. I know that, even with our chief and his time in California, he got to see these complexities here on the West Coast right before his eyes, right? He was right at the ramp up from the time that he stuck in there. He has seen the destruction in California, and I'm sure he's bringing that back. I was really happy to see him speak to Congress and just lay it out on the table what some of the issues are. It'll be up to folks like that if something is going to happen with this agency and get us to be more efficient and more effective. I'd start with that pay raise because that's how you get quality people in here and the big thinkers in here. Oh yeah. But if you're going to start a kid off at $13 an hour, he might as well go work at Sonic. Get a free uniform and a burger every day.
Right? Probably some health insurance, maybe 401k. I know In-N-Out Burger does profit sharing. So
right.
But yeah. Right. No, it's wild to see how things have changed in the short time that I was in fire, over the short 11 years that I was in fire, and now you have the 30. So you've seen even more, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the direction overall as an agency and how we're doing business, do you think we're heading in the right direction, or do you think that we need to really, really reverse speed here? Are we heading towards a cliff?
It's super easy to sit across the table and talk about like a dream organization, right? Of like
armchair quarterback,
right? The woulda, coulda, shouldas, and I'm not naive to the complexities of change, right? The reality is that fire is going to stay within their organizations. I doubt that you're going to see a standalone agency. So how do we maximize our competencies, and how do we maximize our abilities? I don't know how we get there. It's fairly ingrained, right? What do you have to do to be a first year firefighter? You can go sit in front of a computer screen for 40 hours and pop out take your pack test and pop it out. And that's not what we do anymore, right? And so, we spend those first 2 weeks of the season trying to get people up to speed, right? But the reality is this year and the few previous years, if we're starting in March, those guys are coming in somewhat staggered anyway from our own issues with centralized hiring and getting people all the same start dates is next to impossible. So these people trickle in. And so
you're doing multiple fire schools
and training. And then in some cases, just, OJT. And from what I'm seeing, I don't think that's enough, right? I would like to see, like some of the municipal fire departments have gone to, hey, we want you to take, this certification type of academy before you even apply. Right. And that's on you. And I think that's something that we need to look at, something that's more of a 16-week type of program instead of
something legit.
Instead of putting your foot up on the desk in a garage somewhere in the middle of nowhere and learning about wildfire, right? And that was good when we were fighting single tree lightning strikes on a regular basis.
But now you're full scale emergency landscape management and also WUI and all this other shit.
Right. We got all this other stuff. And the NWCG catalog is it kind of set the standard for its time, right?
And, but it's antiquated.
Right. It's antiquated. And it doesn't address the complexities that we have now. It doesn't address the threats that we have now. And I know the folks that sit on those committees are doing the best they can to catch up. It's nice to see some of that training material evolve, but the time where anyone can be anything, I think is coming to an end. Where we're going to need it's going to need to be stratified a little tighter and a little stronger, because fires used to be fun. Now they're a life threat.
Oh yeah. And we're constantly being asked to do more with less.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't do more with less, then you probably shouldn't be in a government job, because if you're going to take a nickel from a taxpayer, then you better give them $1 worth for that nickel. Right.
Fair enough. I see your point.
It's if you're coming into wildfire today, you're either coming in for a year or two to grab some of that adventure because you have some spare time, or because it's your calling. And there's not a lot in between there. Right. And really, it's a profession, and it needs 100%. to be looked at that way. And it needs to be, on the same plane as our foresters and our hydrologists and our archaeologists and our botanists. It's at that level. The things that I've got to keep in my back pocket 24/7 are way more complex than what the majority of geologists learned in school, right? And the consequences of the triggers I pull are significantly different.
100%, man. That's the thing too, is like, I don't understand why we've gotten into this cycle of being this backed into a corner pretty much of being not recognized as first responders even, right?
Right.
I mean, I see a conflict with municipal guys. I mean, yeah, all the time. I love them. Love muni guys.
You bet.
Right.
And they're getting better at wildland fire too.
They're getting better at wildland firefighting scenarios, right? But when they look at us, there's always a stigma. You look at a structure firefighter that's on the line, they're professionals.
Right.
And they look at you like you're a forestry technician more often than not. And now if we were to break down those barriers to say, yeah, we are the same as those municipal guys and girls out there, or we are a professional like a biologist or a forester or whatever.
Yeah, one or the other, right?
We're professionals. year-round fire seasons, man. We train medical. We do.
Right.
We have an infinitely complex career. Now, if we were to get recognized as that would probably be a good starting point to changing the dynamic.
Yeah. My non-fire call volume is almost equal to my fire call volume. I mean, we do quite a bit of things over there, and it's that's just the nature of living out in the middle of nowhere, and you're the only entity out there.
Yeah.
And it no matter which direction it goes, which branch of the tree it takes, is if it becomes its own thing, or if it continues to grow within the agency, or if it actually falls back or even falls off the plate. The fire dynamic, the fire landscape, it's going to continue to evolve, and not in the direction that we want it to. Right. The massive amount of work that we need to do to catch up on fuels is, I mean, you're looking at decades before we make
100%.
Before we make a dent. And I think the chief understands that. I think that he knows that this is, recently, he was quoted in the news and talked about concentrating on the WUI, which is good. We should work from that out. Right.
Yeah. It's the highest
we
risk,
need to be good neighbors.
Yeah.
Right. But we also saw some of our fuels treatments, even some of our really aggressive ones, not work. Right? You're going to have those fires where nothing that you had pre-planned and nothing that you are planning are going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a disaster.
Yeah, and
it is a natural disaster.
Right.
I mean,
it's almost like, how could you let that hurricane hit our shore? Right.
Exactly.
We can't. There's certain things we can't stop. And I think with fire, a lot of people don't understand that. I don't think our congressmen understand that. I don't think a lot of the leadership in our own agencies completely understand that as well. We have glorified the culture of being dirtbags, right? You look at all of us. None of us have had a real shave in decades, right?
Oh yeah.
And we come home and we flop on the couch in our dirty clothes, and our wives smack us around trying to get us to go take a shower. Right. And, but that's what we dig, right? Who's the dirtiest kid who can come back to the station? That's always like
a mark of pride.
Yeah. It's the coolest guy there. Right.
Yeah. 14 days without a shower, man. You're hardcore.
I'll throw one of my own firefighters under the bus. I got this gal that works for me, Alicia, and she went out on this call just the other day, and it was a chip pile on fire. And it only wound up being like 2 by 2.
Yeah.
But she came back, looked like she had been swimming in it, right? And like
blood face.
Oh yeah, she like total hero look. It was awesome. Yeah, but she's super aggressive firefighter. Whether it's 20-foot flames or it's a 2 by 2 smoldering chip pile, she's all in.
That's passion, man.
Yeah, man, it's great. And it's those things that keep me coming back. Right? It's the people that I work with, and in many cases, it's the people that I work for.
Yeah,
right.
It's a culture thing too. Right. I mean, it's like you said.
And I've gotten to work around some of the greatest people. It's been a very rewarding career. It's been some frustrations, and if you can't table those frustrations professionally, it's not the right spot for you.
Yeah.
Right. And but I know guys that are hanging it out there every day, whether it's on the home front or out with their incident management teams. Guys like Don Fragulio, Mike Klemick, our hotshot superintendents, Mike Winch and Mike Sherman, and Ray Torres, the 3 hotshot soups on the Plumas. They're all in.
Oh, yeah.
They're out there kicking ass every day. And if I could slow them down, I would, because I think that's the right thing. But they just run right
a day off.
Yeah, man. They just run right over me. But yeah, no, I mean those are the types of people that make me proud to be part of the agency. My engine captain's Tommy Brenzovich, Steve Tolan, who I've worked with for close to 15 years. They come in my office and tell me I'm a jackass or I'm making a wrong decision. I people should envy that, right? That's the right thing. That's what you want from your guys. Come and get the truth, right?
Absolutely.
And table your hubris at the door, and it's all better for the program. I'm surrounded by great individuals. And, in the twilight of my career, really have no regrets. I have some, bits of trauma and punches in the face here and there.
Mm-hmm.
but it's all about the folks that I work with, and it's all about my community. And that's where it begins and ends.
I can understand a lot of frustration boiling out of that, because I think that fire is one of those problems that's oftentimes forgot about once the snow falls, right?
Absolutely.
It's
right?
a temporary problem, and then people forget about it, right?
Right.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, all those wins, that fire family, that culture, the things that the general public just doesn't see, those are never heard.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem right there is PR, basically. I mean, we, as an agency, we have horrible PR. We don't communicate what we're doing and why we're doing it. We just say, oh yeah, we have X, Y, and Z amount of things contained. This is what this is, the end, right?
Right. There's
no intent, right? It's no leader's intent behind these things. There's no communication. And I can understand where people would get frustrated at being in the public, right?
Right.
Which consequently falls on your shoulders.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm very involved in the community. And so a lot of that stuff, I get that outside of work, not just inside of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm the unofficial mouthpiece of the Plumas National Forest in Quincy, right? And Don Fraguglia does that over in Portola, and James Lico does that out of Oroville and Chico, right? That just comes with the job. Everybody knows who you are. And I mean, you could switch phones every month and people are still going to find out your phone number.
Still going to hit you up.
Right. We don't do the best job at public information. And I actually think that's recognized by the agency. I hear it all the time from our PIOs. Why can't we have something more like CAL FIRE and things like that? And I don't have the answers for that. That's not my wheelhouse. But my wheelhouse is building community, building trust.
Which you're very vocal about too.
I'm pretty vocal about it. Right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of Plumas County. I grew up in Chicago, wound up in Plumas County, and
that's a hell of a distance.
Yeah, it's a hell of a distance, right? It's Plumas County's a calling, man. It's not a community, right? It's not just a place. It's everything.
Oh yeah,
and there's really
beautiful country,
really good people there, and there's nothing like getting pulled over by CHP and knowing who they are, and they still give you a ticket anyway.
It's like this guy,
yeah, right,
ticket,
yeah. But it's I don't know how we do that better. Again, the primary role of the Forest Service is watershed and timber, right?
Yeah.
Threatened species, managing land. Being in the PIO business is relatively new for the agency, even though we've been doing large fires for a while, but there's other things going on. And with the advent of the internet, I think we could take better advantage of that.
Oh, 100%.
But I'm no expert. I mean, my daughters just told me the other day that only old people use Facebook, so I didn't even know that. So
that makes me old, I guess.
Yeah, I'm definitely old. I have no problem when we get up from this and my back's going to creak as I stand. But I'd be the wrong person. With COVID, I know that the virtual town halls for me weren't as effective as being there.
No, you don't get intent, man. There's a lot to be said about body language, right? And what they're saying.
For sure. Yeah. And it's a little easier to defend yourself when someone's standing right there and you kind of give them a truth bomb of like, hey, here are some of the things that that inhibited us from protecting your community, and some of that honestly is on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that always sucks to hear, right? But I was standing a few years ago over to the north of us on a different forest, and one of the community members was wondering why they didn't have a fire truck in their yard, right? And we had about like every other house or so, and I came to talk to that person, and I'm like, I'll park one here, but I won't leave one here.
It's just not defendable.
Right. Yeah. I said, and she was talking about all the undergrowth on the adjacent national forest. And I was looking at, a couple thousand stems per acre on her 2 acres. And I said, your house isn't defendable from any angle.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just coming off the forest.
That's got to be a hard thing to tell somebody. I mean, yeah.
It's those conversations that we need to get across to people as well. If you think that, the old adage, if government's going to do it for you, you're probably going to wind up disappointed.
Oh yeah.
Because we can't do we can't do that, that much on your property. And if you don't help us, we have a tough time helping you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I already put my folks at a tremendous amount of risk, and putting them even more is not really where I want to go. I feel like every year I already elevate that. But, and it's always amazing to see, like the random houses that are left.
It's so random, man. It's so crazy to there's an entire nuked section of forest with a community in it, and you'll see there 1 or 2 random houses that are untouched.
Right.
Almost unexplainable.
Right. And, God bless them. They've got a place to live, and they got to keep all their mementos. And I mean, that's a huge blessing, but, fire has a say. To think that, we're the ones that kind of direct our own destiny is a misnomer. And if you think I have that power, handed down to me and my folks, it doesn't work that way either.
Yeah.
We can put the best fight up in the most defendable home and lose it. And then we can see that one that, somehow it just underburned around their property and we're just fine. There's a randomness to fire, especially large fire. And, there's no real science behind that.
No, especially now these days. I mean, there used to be models and you could kind of forecast what a fire is going to be doing, but nowadays there's not.
Yeah.
And where the fire behavior, the due diligence of yourself as a property owner, right?
Right.
And the communication aspect of how we tell people the proper way of defending or what we're doing, or that whole communication aspect of fire, right? From the agency. Now that all conglomerated into one. I mean, you can have over communications or you can have under communication, right?
Right. There's definitely communication overload, right?
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
People start tuning out.
Exactly. So finding that happy medium and not under communicating, because that's, I think, the point we're at with the agencies, plural agencies.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That kind of leads people to make up their own opinions, which you've also been outspoken about,
Yeah, you bet.
I mean, we need to tell people how it actually is.
Yeah.
There's a harsh reality behind what we do. And unfortunately, since we don't communicate that, it devolves into almost conspiratorial in nature.
It does. And we definitely have, I'm hoping is a loud minority and not a loud majority.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear often of what we did and didn't do. And having been in those places, I'm like, well, that's not how it went down. Right. I was there. I was directing traffic. I know where people were going, and I know where people were standing, and I know where people were doing. We've got everything from, and I'll excuse the tinfoil hat type,
Jewish space laser.
Yeah, Jewish space lasers taking out certain homes, or that there's some kind of rich cabal of people that have more power and tell us what to do with what houses to protect or move resources to wealthier communities. Really, it's, when we get into the communities, we look at values at risk, and it's not necessarily based on dollar value, right? And we've got cultural values, we've got community values, resource values. And the way that we prioritize is life, property, natural resources, generally
in that order,
always. And we make the best go of what we've got at that time with that limited sight picture that we have, the same as any resident has, right?
Yeah.
You really only see what's around you and what you're hearing on the radio. That's your picture, unless you're in an airplane.
Then you get a sky.
Yeah.
That's the only difference, though.
Right. And hopefully that'll change someday. Hopefully we'll, whether that's through, low orbit satellites that can beam real time stuff to our phones or whatever. I'm sure that a
fire guard.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure that stuff will come. I can already get like local and nature video from our tech platforms, and that stuff's all great. But it's still a guy in a shovel, puts the fire out. Right.
100%. It's a hands-on skill to put out fire.
But so we've definitely got a handful of folks, saying that we let this fire burn on purpose, that we sacrifice communities on purpose for other communities. And those things are tough to hear. Like when you get into like space lasers and like really radical type things, I mean, those people, you're never going to win those over, right? Because
they've already stuck to the convictions.
That's that little weird space that some people retreat to for whatever reason, or
it's almost like escapism from like reality,
peculiarities, right? Or whatever. But when I've got members of the community that I hang out with regularly, or that I see at our local pub regularly, telling me that we weren't somewhere where we were, that we never tried to save their home, that we just threw our hands up, or we were afraid, or whatever. Those things are like, minor conspiracies, more on the rumor end of the conspiracy spectrum, right? Yeah. And the untruths. And, I think anybody who feels like they have the truth, like, the fire guys who were there, want to defend themselves, right? That's human nature. You want to be like, no, this is what we really did, right? This is where we were. And so it's always a balancing act of continuing to build community, or pointing out to people that they're wrong, right? Which kind of generally takes away from community. So I try to do that with a lot of humor in my writing, right? Yeah. So I try to bring some of the more bizarre stuff in, and kind of then mix it in with some of the more egregious stuff that is really difficult to choke down. Like, you let my house burn. I didn't let your house burn. Right? No, I didn't let anybody's house burn.
No, that's like everything against what you're trained to do.
Right. Right.
And it doesn't matter if you're a firefighter 1 or BC. There's
no reason. We have no nefarious end. But the ones that I'll go to the mat for, and I don't mind going to the principal's office for, if people are saying, oh, well, you guys didn't fight the fire because you want overtime, or, I'm going to push back on those. It goes beyond, anything that's ridiculous. It goes to the personal integrity of our folks. And so, we've been brought up in the fire community to follow our core values of duty, respect, and integrity, right? And and those ones tick all the boxes of egregiousness, because it attacks all three.
Well, it attacks your character,
right? It attacks your character, and you can say whatever the hell you want about Jeff Dupras. I mean, it hurts. I'll admit it, and it makes me want to pull what's left of my hair out. But when you project that onto my people, it's probably not going to be reciprocated in the most professional way.
Yeah.
I'll just flat out right there. I'll give them the one opportunity. I mean, I'd be welcome to sit down with you. But if you want to continue to perpetuate this after I offer to walk you through what we did, then it's game on, because I won't let you malign my folks.
At least you're sticking up for your folks. There's a lot of people out there that wouldn't do that.
Well, there's not a lot of people who hit retirement date already. So, I choose,
ballsy, man,
and like we talked about, I'll sacrifice a lot for community, because I want my community back.
Yeah.
But I won't tolerate the guys, maligning the work ethic of my people.
Well, it's creating division is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm surrounded by, incredible individuals. I can't, I've got 92 firefighters and I don't have a turd, and that's pretty rare. And,
that's unheard of, really.
Yeah, it's unheard of.
Everybody's got a turd,
right?
I mean,
and the majority of my overhead has been with me for 15 years, right? Or I've been with them.
Yeah.
They were here before me. There's a lot of life investment in these folks, and they deserve somebody who is going to tell other people the truth, and maybe not in the most professional way, but
it needs to be said that way to be understood, right?
Yeah. I mean, I found myself in the brew pub the other day, and someone was spouting off something similar, and I was just like, yeah, that's not how that happened. And he's like, how do you know? I was like, because I was there.
I was literally there.
Right. And if you want to continue down this line, I can tell you every part that you're wrong, or I can tell you what I did and save you the embarrassment. Right.
I think when people get so, stuck to their convictions of what they believe in, that it's a hard pill to swallow when you alter the reality of what they know to be true. Right.
Right. And we've done this nationally, which is really a shame. Right?
It is.
Is that there's a worldview on the left and the right, in whatever other boxes you want to check for that too, and that comes with, each side comes with its own baggage, right? Mm-hmm. And somehow you have to comply with with all those little boxes that you got to check to be in this club or this club.
It's like a litmus test almost.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And we're seeing that, especially it sticks out a little bit more in these smaller communities because you know everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's isolated. It's condensed into.
So if you tend to believe that we did nothing, you're probably the guy who's not getting vaccinated either, right? Because those are all in the same box, right? And it gets to be very, very tiring, right? Because I'm not going to tell anybody to stick anything in their arm. And I'm not going to tell anybody that they can't.
Which is a hot button issue right now. It's very, very hot button.
Right. And, I mean, the president just mandated that federal employees get vaccinated. And, for sure, we're going to have our struggles there.
Understandably so.
I love these guys to death. We don't have to agree to still fall in love with your crews. Right. And so I'm still there. I'll fight their war for them even when I don't agree with them.
Yeah.
It's a tough way to live in a bigger city. We're sitting here in Reno. There's room to escape.
There is.
Right.
Yeah.
I go out to dinner and take my wife or my kids out to dinner, and I'm going to be in the same room with some of the people that are accusing us of doing nothing or doing something wrong or not being somewhere where we should have been. And man, it's been tough to look at people in the eye, right? They're disappointed, and rightfully so. They should be disappointed. This is huge. But if any of them decide to pick up this podcast, the one thing that I would want them to know is that, the folks on the Mount Huff Ranger District and the other 2 adjacent districts that gave me help with our surge capacity, I mean, we did the best that we could every second of the day,
given the circumstances.
Yeah,
yeah.
And but I'd be happy to walk through our successes as well as our mistakes, because we got to own those too. And I'm not embarrassed of those. They were just missed opportunities.
Yeah.
We couldn't be somewhere on time, and we missed that opportunity. That's probably the majority of them, right? We couldn't pivot in real time. The fire was moving so fast, and we never got up with it.
Cooking, man. Jesus.
Day late, $1 short on a lot of things. And that's on us. And, but we did a lot of right things, and those guys should be recognized for that as well.
And that's another thing too, is like recognizing those things that you did right, that the agency or the forest or whoever did right. Those are always often overlooked.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's always often overlooked.
I mean, you look at, that's our culture too. Like, bad news is good news, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what keeps people in business. I mean, you get the one feel good story to get or someone found a puppy dog with big derpy eyes, and everybody goes, and now it's off to who did whatever, or who believes whatever, or whatever the national hot button is.
It's that whole adage of 1,000 attaboys is easily taken away by one fuck up.
Oh, yeah. Totally. I mean, look at what happened with our own sugar fire when that thing escaped containment, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't have any information on it just because I wasn't there, and I wouldn't malign an operation that I wasn't a part of.
Yeah, we're not going to armchair quarterback something you weren't there for.
But I have the same seat as everybody else, right? And the look of that thing is terrible, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're like,
the optics, yeah.
The optics of that thing is just awful. The reality is that part of the forest gets a lot of wind, and we weren't as diligent as we should have been, is what it looks like to me. And I think that's what a lot of people look at it, right? But I wasn't there.
Yeah. I
don't know what happened. And so I can't throw stones at an operation. I can only speculate. And that's not fair to the guys who are on the ground.
Yeah.
Because it could be something as innocuous as one spark, because we've got the probability of ignition at that point in time was 100%, which is, any spark that leaves the black and goes into the green, it's a percentage of how likely it is to start a fire in a receptive fuel bed. And that whole area is a receptive fuel bed. That means every spark that left during any gust of wind over that, I don't even know how big the fire was at that time. It was like
20 acres maybe.
Okay.
I thought it was pretty small when it escaped. I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I didn't pay much attention because we had our own stuff going on, but so yeah, let's say it was 20 acres, right? It's not unreasonable for a spark to leave the black.
Yeah. Something could have kicked up from the middle of it. That's a small isolated fire. I mean, even if it was 10, 20, it doesn't matter. It's all relative, right? It could be fully contained.
And in these years, that's how random it is. And that's how diligent we have to be, because in the end, that wound up being a fairly significant fire that impacted a lot of lives. Right. And, again, I don't know what happened, but I'm sure we can do better than that.
Yeah.
Right. And, whether that's having, contingency resources or having more people stay on fire. And I don't know though. I wasn't there, but we don't cover up our mistakes, right? That's the generation that me, Don, and Lico were brought up in. You know, we raise our hands and we say, hey, yeah, that wasn't our best foot, and then we don't have any other choice but to move forward. We don't get the luxury of perseverating on our mistakes forever because we have new mistakes that we're about to make, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, same thing to be said about the Tamarack fire down in, what was that, Alpine County?
Yeah. And I only got bits and pieces of that as well, because we were right in the middle of us.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you have the Beckworth, you have, I think the Dixie was popping off during that time, and then Bootleg in Oregon. I mean, you've got shit hitting the fan in other places with, more resources, values at risk, rather.
Yeah.
So those are going to be reappropriated to that area. We have a finite amount of resources, and then you have a single tree that's up on the ridge in the middle of a wilderness area.
Right.
Fuck, I would pass that one up. I would, as a decision-making strategy, I would have passed that one up probably, but it's easy to say that, but.
Yeah. When we get into with the different planning levels, and you get into a PL5, you getting any resources are fairly slim unless you are directly in the fight.
Yeah.
And, but if you're winding down or you're in the kind of that deeper midsection of the fire, man, it's tough because you're not getting what you need. And sometimes the quality of the stuff that you get isn't always the best either. And again, our contractors are a necessity. But having a cohesive workforce that's larger than what we have would be another solution. We need to address what we have on the landscape, and that's more than what we can handle.
Oh, 100%, man.
And God bless those guys. I mean, there was a time when we only had back when contracting first really started booming up in Region 6. We'd only see those guys for mop up, right?
Yeah.
And they would come in and they'd help us clean everything up and mop up and patrol and on occasion, grab a small IA and things like that. But
catch a spot or something.
They're fairly integral into our plans. I think one of the few places that you see them now or don't see them now is just down in the southern forest, where you have piles of local government that are all integrated.
Yeah. They have Type 3 engines at like a downtown station, right? Yeah. And the OES engines and all that stuff. So there's, otherwise they're pretty prolific everywhere else. And just like any agency, you've got good guys and bad guys, but the bigger issue is that they're not cohesive, right? I mean, I rattled off a ton of names already, right? People that I'm really proud of or associated with, and I can't do that in the contracting world. I don't know. I know Jess Wills at Firestorm. Yeah.
And his guys, and they've been doing fine for us. And I'm pretty stoked.
Pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. I've actually had them on the show, and they've got one of probably the more progressive contracting crews out there.
Right. And we're their host unit.
Yeah.
So they get dispatched.
Right out Chico, yeah.
And they get dispatched off the Plumas.
Okay.
And they've done a great job. We've had their resources all summer long until even though they belong to us, they got yanked by the greater fire gods and moved them somewhere else.
Yep.
So
needs of the government.
Right. But yeah, contracting is good to a point, but it doesn't help you with any kind of cohesive strategy.
They have a different mission, man. It's just like saying the same. Yeah. You can say the same thing about Cal Fire, right? They're a massive organization. We rely on them heavily, but they have a different mission. Right. A completely different set of rules.
Right. And one of the things I think people don't understand, like when you cross a California line, you get into a whole different jurisdictional structure than you do in the rest of the United States. So, we operate under direct protection, which could have multiple jurisdictions in your response area that you're responsible for.
Yeah. You turn out a fire and 7 different agencies are going to show up.
Right. Except on the Mount Huff Ranger District of the Plumas, where we don't have Cal Fire. And I'm responsible for all state and private property as well.
So that's been delegated to you.
Right. That's been delegated to us. So all state private property falls under the Forest Service direct protection area. And so, when you look at the map of the Mount Huff, it makes it very simple when it comes to California firefighting, as far as jurisdiction wise. Mm-hmm. Everything you see on the map belongs to us. And so there's some, a streamlined process there where we don't have to really integrate with CAL FIRE. The bad part is we don't really integrate with CAL FIRE because they're not around. They don't have a station. There's one in Plumas County up in Westwood, but they cover Westwood and Chester, and north is their DPA. Everything south of that of Lake Elmonor is ours. So we don't have that day in and day out interactions and relationships with CAL FIRE like everybody else has up and down the coast, and so it makes it fairly difficult to build those trust patterns and to build those relationships and build cohesive strategies and to really get to know each other like they do down on our Feather River district, where every time the bell goes off, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah. Full response usually every time.
Yeah. And we do full response, but it's usually all green.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes we get the Westwood engine and depends upon if Susanville's got crews over on our side doing project work, and we'll grab those guys too. But
it's got to make things complicated as far as, initial attack.
Yeah. Right now it makes it easy because it's just us.
Well, it's just you, but as far as like if things were to get, I guess if things were to escalate with a new start, I mean, that's got to complicate matters.
Yeah. And, we have hardcover stations just like everybody else. So once you dump the station, engines are coming from the backfill, whether it's from our forest or from the Tahoe or from the Lassen, the El Dorado, wherever, they're going to come and backfill. And so everybody moves up and covers. And it's just like the rest of the state. It's just our trucks are always going to be green on that district.
Yeah.
And then on occasion, if CAL FIRE is closer, if the Westwood engine moves a mile towards us, then they'll be grabbed up in the CAD as well.
Get swooped up.
Yeah, get swooped up and come over. We see the Jarbo Gap guys a lot in the Feather River Canyon, especially for traffic collisions and drownings and things like that, where we meet up with those guys. But there really is a disconnect for us on that central district on the Plumas, getting to know our CAL FIRE counterparts. Although the last few years we've run into each other quite a bit.
Yeah. Understandably so. I mean, look at the fire activity you've been having on there.
Right.
Whole forest.
We can't operate without them. And we've got a Chief Packwood over in Susanville, and Messina down in Butte are great chief officers and help us out tremendously. And they're always a phone call away. I've got nothing. People like to bag on CAL FIRE.
Everybody likes to shit on CAL FIRE.
Yeah, everybody likes to shit on CAL FIRE, but
sit in hotels, man.
But Packwood's a beast, and we wouldn't have the successes that we've had without his equipment. And that's not political bullshit. That's just the real deal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's good to have those guys where they're at. They're very practical, very direct, and very quick. When they say you're going to get something, it's
pretty much going to get it. Yeah.
And they don't dilly dally. It comes. And from their dozers to their what's left of their inmate program to
that was a hit, man. As far as firefighting resources go.
Well, when you let everybody out of jail, you lose a lot of your firefighters.
There's that.
But I don't know. Maybe they get paid more.
Well, they might now, at least.
But no. So we have a decent relationship with, but we don't have that day in and day out. Like some of the busier forests that tone out multiple times a day. They'll be toned out with CAL FIRE and integrate with those engine crews very well.
A mutual aid response.
Yeah. We'll get them over, but it's generally if something's pushing hard. Yeah,
man. You guys have been getting, like I said, the shit end, the business end of the stick. I try not to swear as much on my podcast anymore, but fuck it, whatever. The shit end of the stick on the Plumas, man. And I mean, yeah, the community, it definitely sounds like you're very well integrated and you're adhered to that community. Like you're passionate about defending your community, man.
Absolutely. My kids go to school there. They're growing up there. And when we moved there, my kids were 2 years old. So it's all they know.
Yeah.
And they all drive now. So, so most of them
just give me a phone call when they're on the road. No.
Yeah. So it's, right. They're all coming of age and they grow up and they've got ears too.
Yeah.
Right. They hear what a turd their dad is. They hear what a great guy he is. They hear all that stuff, right?
Full spectrum. Nowhere in between.
Yeah, I think maybe. I don't know. But, I keep pushing that word community over and over and over again, because it's kind of the life's blood of living in rural areas. If we're not in it together, we're not going to make it.
Oh yeah.
And Greenville has a good toehold to rebuild. It's not ideal, right, by any means. But at this point, Greenville's a master of their own destiny. What can you do with it? How are you going to put it back together? The same with Paradise, right? We'll be there to help in any way that we can. It's tragic, and it sucks to see. It's not fun right now. And I don't know, it's probably been a good 5 years since fire was fun. But now it's just one thing after the next. And if it's not Greenville, it's somewhere else. And I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon.
Sounds like there's a huge mental health component to not only yourself, not only the fire community, but also the communities themselves, like Greenville, Chico, Paradise, Beckworth, all that stuff.
It's not a firefighter issue. The trauma's not limited to the community and not limited to the firefighters. It's intermeshed. And I can see it in my own program. I'm not going to give examples, dude. I mean, everybody's got their entitlement to their own personal demons,
and not everybody's suffering is the same as another. So
no, but there's a good deal for us. Right my own stations. It's not easy. I've got people that are angry. I got people that are broken, and I've got people that are doing just fine, I think. We've got a pretty open door for folks to communicate what they're going through. I'm really proud of them, if that hasn't come across yet. So.
I would be proud of these folks, not only the firefighters, but also the community as well, especially what they've endured year after year for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
It's no short order, like the amount of tragedy and the amount of destruction that you've witnessed. Where do we go from here? I mean, like, it's hard to say. I know that it's a loaded question, but
wheels turn slowly, right?
Yeah.
Fire for its foreseeable future is going to be within the agency. So how do we adapt? I think there's some great ideas out there that aren't even mine, right? And so, you've got a revamp of some of the training materials that we've got out there. The agency's really stepped up on its mental health and peer support type of programs. Mm-hmm. We brought those folks in several times, and I grew up in a time where nobody would ever take advantage of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I sat in on a few of them, and I didn't even want to go. But it was really cathartic, and it was great to see how many of our young folks participated in that. I'm pretty happy with the successes we've had there, and it's all about just kind of discussing, where you're at and what are some of the tools to deal with some of the trauma and how to recognize it in other people and in yourself, and some self-care stuff. And most of it's just very practical, very binary, and but I think that if we grab a hold of some of that stuff, it's a step in the right direction. I don't think it's really a holistic approach at this point.
No.
Without the right scheduling, without the right pay, without the ability to raise your family, or feed your family, those things are all secondary, right? Those are your primary needs right there.
Yeah.
And until
hierarchy of needs, man.
Right. Until we get our primary needs met, it's tough to get the mental health stuff in order, right? When you're worried in the middle of winter,
if you're going to starve.
If you're going to starve because you made $800 that month, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and your mortgage is $1,200 or $2,000 or whatever it costs to live in California these days. It's very difficult. And I think, to the agency's credit, they're at least acknowledging that there is a problem. Our biggest issue is how do we take an identified problem and bring the solution to the table in the appropriate amount of time. So, and we could take the forestry technician thing, and it's, which is of course secondary to how we pay people. Call me whatever the hell you want if you pay me correctly.
Yeah.
But if we paid people correctly, that's the one place that we could really do a lot of damage really quickly to the good side, right? I mean, if you paid people so they didn't have to work, most people don't realize that 1,000 hours of overtime is pretty standard for a hot shot crew, and our engine crews are right there.
You
like
aim
at
for
800, right? Yeah, you aim for 1,000. 800 is what our engine crews are getting, which is a crap ton. But that 1,000 hours of overtime represents 6 months of work in regular hours, right?
Mm-hmm. On top of the 8 months that you're already doing.
So, and most of my guys are 26 and 0, so they're running 3,200 hours a year if they get 1,000 hours, right? And if they go over that, then it's more. So you get 3,200 hours a year. So that's 18 months compressed into 12. And really it's compressed even shorter because it's in the fire season, the high fire season.
Yeah.
And it's does ungodly damage to our families and
physically health, mental health, emotional health. Yeah.
So if you skip these guys, they started doing another thing this year, which I think is another good step, but not enough. But movement in the right direction is that if you roll 14, you get 3 off instead of 2.
I saw that.
You used to have to get, you used to have to get permission for that third day off, which I thought was kind of crazy as well. Like they need a third day off, take a third day off, right?
Yeah.
And hotshot superintendents are really good at it. Our engine crews are starting to learn that if you align your departure date just right, you might get a 5-banger and get a 5 full days off and your regular days off. But at the same time, we don't give those guys that mid-season like lull, right? Even though there's no lull, can we stagger crews at different times to get them? And that's not in our culture. So that would be something that would be ill received, right? Because we need that overtime. Those hotshots need that overtime. If you got kids making $12.97 an hour, they need that overtime just to live, especially if some of those guys have families, right?
Yeah. Especially in the winter, man. It's hard to, who's going to hire you for, 6 months?
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate because most of my guys are permanent, but California unemployment pays way better than
base wages,
right? And so it's most of those guys would rather go back to an 18 and 8, and because they can
get some time to breathe,
and make more money. And so I think that the pay thing for me would be number one. That's the start, right? That's how you start to heal the rift between labor and management. Yeah. The second one would be recognizing people for what they are, because I think that's going to attract more people.
Yeah.
If I had a booth up that says forestry technicians are hiring here and a booth that said firefighters are hiring here,
you'd have a line out the door on one of them, not the other.
Everybody else is I don't want to be a forestry technician. What the hell is that?
That sounds dumb.
Yeah. So retention and recruitment that helps. I'm classic call I got was we were hiring apprentices, and then this apprentice from the East Coast got his paperwork in, and he called me and he's like, "Hey, I applied for this job, this firefighting wildfire apprentice job, and I got paperwork for a forestry technician." I'm like, "Well, that's
how
what
it works, buddy."
And he's like, "Yeah, I don't want to be a forestry technician. I want to be a firefighter." And I'm like, "Well, that's what we call firefighters out here." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't like that."
So you lost one, not do that.
No, he actually came, but like it kind of freaked him out, right? And that's what we're doing to people.
Well, the expectations versus reality when you get that news when you're first starting out.
Yeah, but come August, you'll feel like a firefighter.
Oh, yeah.
Until someone calls you a forestry technician.
You lose, 20, 30 pounds over the course of a season?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you do it 50 anymore, but let's see. So, those are really binary steps to building the program up, to having trust with your employees and your workforce, right?
Yeah.
Get them a job description that actually represents what they do. I mean, we used to go paint picnic tables on a regular basis. We don't have time for that anymore, right? So the forestry technician thing or grabbing a recreation tech and throwing them in an engine. That's few and far between now. We don't really do that anymore. We used to have a big militia corps, and we don't do that.
It's just
anymore.
not there anymore.
No.
Yeah.
Everybody's specialized, right? And then changing the culture, and that can only come with better pay, right? If we want people to work less overtime, which I do, right, and not sell their soul to the agency.
Yeah. Chasing that almighty dollar.
In the end, this is a job. It's a great job, and it definitely checks all the boxes for me. And it's been an awesome adventure, and I have very, very few regrets. But at the same time, it comes at a tremendous cost. When my kids were young, they very rarely saw me.
Yeah.
It took till I got this division chief job to be able, and my wife to go back to work, for us to be able to, take a week off in the middle of summer and go on vacation like regular people do. So building that all stems off of paying people correctly so they can feed their families. They can take a day off. They can take their family leave, which most of my guys don't take because it just pays base wages. Right.
Yeah.
And our base wages are so small that
they can't
take that 12 weeks. Right.
Yeah.
Because they need to earn. And, so to me, that's the first step. Because right now the agency owns our firefighters, and unless it goes to a different agency and we see some kind of pay parity with that in probably a long time from now before something like that would happen, it's up to the agency to take care of these folks. And if that means that we got to start hiring these guys as GS6 and 7s,
so be it,
and have some compression in the pay scale, so be it. Right? Maybe a first year firefighter should be a GS6.
I think so. I mean,
they're still living below the poverty line, right where we want them, right?
Yeah, but still, there's a future and you're going to be able to retain more firefighters at that base pay rate,
right?
But also, you're going to provide a future for them to work towards, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, we got in at $18 an hour. I think that's what a GS6 is, at least.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. I just know that it's not enough.
Yeah, if you're to tell me today, like what I was getting myself into as far as getting into risking my life for, a GS3 or a GS4 wage, I'd tell somebody to go fuck themselves.
Yeah, I was GS2 when I started.
Yeah.
GS2 trail crew member. So,
but like you're saying, man, cost of living has not kept up with inflation. The wages have not kept up with cost of living.
Right. So, yeah, it's tough to be new coming into this, and we're seeing that even though we offered full-time jobs, for most people, this is a temporary pit stop on their journey to somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
We got guys leaving for CAL FIRE and local fire departments. We got people giving it up altogether and doing something different.
I'm one of them.
Right. But at this point, if they would have paid you a 6-figure salary to be a chief officer, that would probably be
definitely be an incentive to stay.
Exactly. You might be making less than you're making now, but
it's the passion though. I would have done the job for less because I loved it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why I stay. I can get to where I need to be. But also my partner needs to pull in a certain amount too. My wife is a counselor at the local school, and up until a few years ago, she was raising her kids, and daycare was more expensive than mom care. And so she sacrificed her career for us to stay with the agency. So the employees are willing to sacrifice. My only question for someone like Randy Moore would be, are you willing to sacrifice for us? Right.
That's the big question right there.
Right. And I've had the opportunity to meet him. Although, like anybody, I don't agree with everything that the agency does.
I think healthy conflict is important. Though.
Right. Yeah. And I wouldn't even call it conflict.
Healthy disagreement.
Disagreement, right? And but the one thing that I do know about Randy Moore is he cares about our personnel, which is a good thing, right? I've never met another Forest Service chief before, but I've met Randy when he was the regional forester multiple times.
Yeah.
And, the way that he handled his staff and the way that he handles people and the way that he handles our community have always been above the board.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to think that his his top responsibility, the priorities that he has coming in as chief is to take care of his folks. And because that's what I've seen. And maybe not everybody agrees with me on that, but
well, I mean, I know that a lot of the community out there, I mean, Randy's been on record saying, if you don't like this job, you can leave.
Right.
And it's well known. It's been well documented that he said that. And there's a lot of animosity towards that statement. Understandably so.
Well, we used to have a previous fire director that said, you get paid in like sunsets and smiles or something like that, right? And that didn't go over very big.
People are getting pissed at that shit nowadays, man. Yeah. So there needs to be some sort of reconciliation for that. Yeah, none of that stuff puts food on the table, right?
No. And that's where we get, when I look at, I really don't want to embarrass any of my own folks, but I've seen my own people with EBT cards in the grocery store, right? All of my young families qualify for WIC, all of them. That's a goddamn tragedy. Yeah, it's not good, right? So if I could change, if I was, able to say to the chief, the number one thing for all firefighters, and I think it probably would roll through all the ranks, because I can't even imagine being like a GS3, 4, or 5 like rec technician. How do you pay for gas, right? The pay differential is so out of whack. And then you take it to a whole new level when you cross that California line.
Oh right? Yeah. Cost of living goes up infinitely.
Slap me on both sides of my face, right?
Yep.
And so that would be my number one thing I would like to see changed. I could live within the current structure I have my entire adult life. Mm-hmm. If I saw my guys getting paid more. Even my counterpart, I don't need to make California wages to make it work. My life's just fine and uncomplicated as it is.
Yeah.
But my counterpart, his wages are almost triple.
Holy shit.
Right. And, but yeah, I also don't want to be put on like a 70-day hold for fire either. Right?
But you get the sweet hotel room.
Get the sweet hotel rooms, right? That's why I roll with CAL FIRE teams, but I don't work for CAL FIRE.
Yeah, but that's the thing. And going back to our professional thing and comparing us to a municipal firefighter or CAL FIRE or a biologist, we are professionals, but we're also one of the largest professional firefighting organizations in the entire world.
Yeah.
But we're not recognized as such, man. That's why I think that's why I understand the importance and advocate for organizations like Grassroots Wildland Firefighters, man. They're huge.
Reva Duncan,
Reva, Luke, Kelly, all those people, man. And they're doing some monumental work on Capitol Hill, because it's not just Randy Moore that's going to be able to just pencil whip something in there. You got an OPM in there. You've got congressmen and women. You've got the agencies. You've got all these things. Like I could spout out like 7 different agencies, not including your Capitol Hill counterparts. Yeah. Well, and I find it funny too, when we talk about how we do better for our folks, and we, a lot of our firefighters, myself included, we've gone off and done international programs and building capacity in other countries. And I did a stint in North Africa where we were building agencies, right? And so fire program was based with their land management agency, which is called the Food Security Service, but it's a land management agency. And then, but the contractors that I was working with, they were advocating for it to be its own thing. So it wasn't attached to a land management agency. And now it's FEPRA, which is their federalized fire department, right? So even our own contractors are saying, this isn't the right spot for this because don't do it like us.
Well, it doesn't have room to grow, right?
Yeah.
It gets boxed in. Whereas you see an entity like CAL FIRE, and you see the equipment that they're bringing in, their aviation program is expanding, both on the fixed and rotor wing side. You're seeing their incident management teams standing up to a capacity that they've never had before, right? They've always been that agency that probably has one of the better initial attack capacities out of any wildland firefighting entity in the country, right? If not the world. And I have no problem giving a pat on the back.
Yep, my camera died.
Oh,
let me see if I can turn that back on. Sorry, man.
Yeah, no problem. I need a drink anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna.
How much did we miss?
We're good. So,
all right.
Like this. You need a drink.
What's that?
You need a drink, or
I already did.
All right. So let me sound clap that back in.
Yeah.
Luckily, I got the GoPro going. Sorry about that, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Alrighty. So where were we?
We were talking about CAL FIRE and their initial attack capacity, some of the best in the world, right? Where are we going with that? Yeah. Oh, I was saying that now we're seeing the strengths being built up in their long-term planning, the long-term strategical planning when we have these big conflagrations and multi-month incidents, because that wasn't their bread and butter, right? That's not what they did for so long. They hit it hard and go home, right? And now we're looking at I don't know how many teams CAL FIRE has fielded this year, but they're doing a hell of a job in an area that they're not new to, but they're relatively new when you look at, the federal agencies. So there's a model there that continues to evolve, right? And they're evolving with the ground truths that they're seeing.
Yeah.
And I think, it may be easier for a standalone entity like CAL FIRE to do that than an agency that is responsible for land management and timber and threatened species and all these other things, watershed, right? And then also fire, which just happens to be their largest portion of what they do, right? So this part kind of gets stuck and evolves with all the other stuff.
Well, it caps out.
While we see these other agencies continue to take on technology and equipment and different tactics and be able to progress as the threat progresses. And I wouldn't say we're stagnant, because we're not. We're bringing some incredible technology to the table, but the way that we're organized doesn't allow for rapid integration of new technology.
No, I mean, and just like you're saying, the infinitely large gears of bureaucracy turn extraordinarily slow.
Yeah, on purpose, right?
On purpose, yeah. It's a system of checks and balances that no one really ever talks about, but it's purposely built that way, right? But if you're to have a new agency, or if you were to, I guess, separate land management and fire into its own agencies, I mean, you might have more agility to pivot when needed.
Well, I think both types of agencies would have that right independently. Even the land management agency would have the ability to pivot a lot quicker.
Oh, yeah.
Because I mean, they're dealing with the same things. Like how do you put this thing back together, right? Like, we have those bear teams that come in and help you fix things, but man, it's so overwhelming, and we're not the only ones. We're still working over on the August complex, right?
Oh yeah, you're probably still working on the Thomas fire.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
Right. And then, if you're down in Southern California, it never ends, because anything that's black washes out as soon as it rains, right?
Well, that's the thing about wildfire that people don't typically think about. We always think of fire as suppression costs and loss of property immediate, right? No one thinks about like the long-term damage, your insurance, your flooding, your all this other shit that goes into fire. And the costs of the campfire, I mean, it was like in the billions of dollars, not including suppression, right?
Right. It's probably $1 billion of suppression costs. I have no idea what the cost was on that fire, but it was tremendous.
I'm sure we can Wikipedia it, and a number's going to pop up there, but yeah.
Well, we've got a healthy dose of the American taxpayer money on this one too. So it's, I don't know what the future is. I don't see the Department of Interior or Agriculture loosening that grip anytime soon.
I doubt they will.
Right? I mean, nobody wants to lose their programs. What would be best for the American people? I mean, I have my opinion. Starting a new agency isn't going to be super popular with the right side, and losing that land management fire capacity won't be all that popular on the left either, right?
Yeah.
So nobody really wants to put together another government agency.
No, I mean, Yeah, you got the Space Force. That was kind of done haphazardly, but
Fire Force.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, where would you fall under though? I mean, is that going to be Department of Homeland Security? Is that going to be DOD? I mean,
who knows?
What are we doing? Is that FEMA?
Yeah, I would, if it was me, I would advocate to dissolve FEMA and have a one-stop shopping.
Yeah.
Right. And FEMA hasn't always had the best reputation anyway. And so you could roll it over into a new agency that kind of takes on both things. And, you have firefighters that are trained in all things and actually trained, not just a 40-hour class at your local community college and then you pop out a firefighter.
Yeah. Right? You put them through.
We're already beyond that. And, I know folks are trying hard to update our training, but we're woefully behind. And if it's going to stay, in some kind of stasis for a long time, we may need to think about, like a real fire academy to send these folks to.
Oh yeah, that and funding and wages and all of the stuff, the land management thing. I mean, it's huge. That's bring it back full circle. I mean, I think that's what the biggest problem is people don't approach this with the complexity that it deserves because no one recognizes those complexities.
Right. The hard thing to do in anything government is to treat the whole patient. Right.
You can't do that with this though.
Right.
There's so many.
Right. There's so many tentacles. But and so when you look at it, what are the things that we can do? That would be my question. If I could answer the chief and have that kind of one-on-one conversation, like how hard is it really to change a job description? How hard is it really to pay someone better? Is it really this complex? Like we really can't just say, hey, we're just going to do this and tomorrow it's done.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd be more than happy to write the job descriptions if we could, right?
You might be biting off more than you can chew there.
But it's not that what we do is complex on the ground, but as far as explaining what we do, it's not that complex.
True.
We put fire out and we respond to, a handful of non-traditional calls every year. Right. But this workforce could actually do more. And we do. We went down to the shuttle. We went to the pilot in New York. We
put shots in people's arms.
We put shots in people's arms all winter, right? And so why don't we recognize these folks for what they do? Why don't we train them to the level that they're to that level that we want them to be at, to what the American taxpayer expects them to be as firefighters?
Yeah.
And then why don't we pay them correctly?
Well, that's the other thing too, is I think the American taxpayer doesn't realize the benefit that this would have. I mean, this could satisfy a lot of objectives on both the left and the right, since everybody's so goddamn divided and polarized right
it's
now.
It's our hotshot crews cutting out trees and hurricanes, right?
Exactly.
It's our guys digging in the pile or going over to Guam and distributing water and blue roofs, right? It's during cyclones.
Well, think about it this way too. I mean, if you were to pay people better and you were to increase the size and capacity and the complexities of that workforce into something that's truly recognized as all risk, not only are you reinvesting to your rural communities as far as jobs, but also you're providing a better bang for your buck for the American taxpayer dollar.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm all in.
I am too, man.
But we'll see where it takes us. But tomorrow I'm going to put my Forest Service uniform on and go to work. Right.
Right.
And that's who I work for. And I'm, I've said it a few times. I'm pretty proud of the work that we've been doing, and I'll continue to invest in the community, and hopefully some of these bigger things happen for these younger folks. But I'd sure like to see that pay raise for my guys soon.
Oh yeah. Well, man, I think we landed on that one.
Yeah. And, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. No worries, man. This is awesome, man. It was good to see like the behind the scenes of your point of view from seeing the Dixie, the camp, the Berry Creek, all of that stuff, man. And it's a story that needs to be heard by a lot of people so they understand the true behind the scenes action, get a better understanding of what's going on and like how things actually work. It's important, man.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you giving us a voice.
Yeah. I'm just a facilitator, man. It's your voice. So all the guests that make the show. But yeah, man, traditionally at the end of the show, I always like to give an opportunity for you to give a shout out to a homie, hero, mentors. Who do you got, man?
Oh man, I've got a ton, and I'll start with the young guys. I've got tremendous young hotshots that are out working right now. Jordan Wade and Jay Shekla, our squad leaders, Marcus Sarton, and Mike Sherman and Joe McGinn running that program. They've done a heck of a job with very few people this year. I'm super proud of them. Dave Dale and Brandon Martin on Plumas Helicopter 512, my old stomping grounds. Really impressed with how far they've taken that program, well beyond anything I was able to do with it. So I couldn't be happier. My captains, Tommy Brenzovich, Steve Tolan, Ramon Rodriguez, Colin Schaefer, Clayton Beck, running our 5-engine companies. Most of those guys I've known for the last 15 years. So always give me good advice, keep me in line. They're the ones that are around the most. And I always appreciate their input. And our dozer guys, we have a brand new dozer program. We turned the whole thing over, and I stole some guys from the Lassen, and so we got Brandon and Tom and Bo running that. And I just couldn't be happier. Right? Yeah. What's that?
Dozer 2.
Dozer 2. Plumas Dozer 2. Yeah. Yep. All a bunch of rookies, right? And then I've got Luke Pascucci, Jason Bates, James Hamilton, and Zach Kogel as our patrols. And then guys that I can't live without: Jordan Townsend, my suppression BC on the north side, and Patrick Callahan on the south side, and Dan Patterson in fuels. Man, those guys are all rock stars. As far as like old guy mentors, I'll just leave that for my guys, but it's the youngsters I'm the most impressed with. So I'm going to leave it with them.
Hey, they're the future of the Forest Service, man.
Yeah, the future for whatever it becomes. Yeah.
There we go.
Hell of a program. And I've learned more from them than I learned from any old guy.
Right on, man. Well, Jeff, thank you for being on the show, man. And
appreciate it.
Hopefully we'll get you back on, man.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd love to come back.
Oh yeah. And those apologies for those who are watching this on YouTube. My camera decided to overheat, so half of it's going to be high def and half of it's going to be kind of somewhat shitty GoPro. And also apologies for my whining 2 golden retrievers. But with that being said, we'll catch you on the next one. Jeff, thank you so much, man.
Appreciate it.
And boom, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of the Anchor Point Podcast is in the books with my good friend, Mr. Jeff Dupras. Dude, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your inside knowledge and your just your experience, man. That's no small feat to get on the show and tell it how it is. And I appreciate you being a true advocate, not only for the boots on the ground, but also the communities that are affected by these wildfires. I know that wildfire has changed dramatically over the last 30 years. And we don't do a good job of telling a story of what goes on and how it actually is. So this message right here, I guess, is more geared towards the general public that's listening to this episode. I really, really encourage you to listen to this again and listen to it thoroughly, because what the topics that Jeff and I talked about today on the show, they are the new reality. Fire seasons are only going to get more intense. They're only going to get longer. The wildland urban interface is going to only encroach more into the forest. We're fastly getting into a situation that's becoming unmanageable. And it's not just climate change, if you choose to believe in it or not. It's not just land management practices. It's not just logging. It's not just grazing. It's not just personnel. It's not just funding. It is all of these things boiled down into one. So with that being said, I encourage you, highly, highly encourage you to do your own due diligence. Get insured, make sure you're insurable, get your defensible space squared away, educate yourself on Firewise communities, and share this message, because this whole episode is utterly invaluable to the general public. And I hope that you listen, because the reality on the ground, the truth on the ground, is that we are being asked to do more with less, and it's becoming more and more impossible. So with that being said, thank you once again, man, and keep being an advocate for our boots on the ground and our communities. I deeply appreciate it. A lot of these subjects that we talked about today, for the boots on the ground definitely are going to be covered by the Grassroots Wildland Firefighters organization. They're doing some serious work behind the scenes to change this dynamic with our situation on the ground. So if you guys want to find out more about that, go over to www.grwff.com or grassrootswildlandfirefighters.com and check out all of the things that they're doing. It's pretty damn epic. So for the rest of you, men and women on the line, I applaud you for the incredible season that back-to-back incredible seasons that you have endured. And I hope that you're taking care of yourself and staying safe out there. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. So with that being said, we got a special shout out to our sponsors. We've got Mystery Ranch. They make the finest damn packs in the wildfire game, but they make a ton of other stuff. And they're giving back to the wildfire community. Yeah, go over to www.mysteryranch.com and check out the Backbone series. It is awesome. We've got Hot Shot Brewery, purveyors of the finest damn coffee on the West Coast. Yeah, they make kick-ass coffee for a kick-ass cause. So if you want to go over there and get your morning started off right, go over to www.hotshotbrewing.com. We've got the Ass Movement. They are the finest in poo-bearing propaganda. So there's nothing more than I hate than having a fresh pile of human poop on the trail. And that shit needs to stop. So if you want to spread the poo-bearing propaganda, go over to www.thefirewild.com and check out the Ass Movement. And last but not least, we've got the Smoky Generation. Bethany, you have a kick-ass organization over there. Keep it up. Go over to www.wildfireexperience.org and check it out. For the rest of you, y'all know the drill. Stay safe, stay savage. Peace.